am Nat.
And I'm Guy. And good evening, Alberta. This is your home for everything Alberta independence. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we try to do a 3-hour show. So get yourself a drink, get yourself some popcorn, and you should be well informed by the end of this thing.
And before we start, also, please, I have to remember, please do subscribe. It really does help us out a lot. And we do read all your comments. If you want your comment read out loud, put a capital C before it. And also, we prioritize super chats, but they are not necessary.
Yeah, and we try to focus on the petition and signatures, what's going on with that in the first opening segment of the show. And then we get into news, important characters, stuff like that that's going on with Alberta independence before we get into national Canadian news that's related to Alberta independence.
Yes.
Okay. You want to? We had a couple comments about the weather again.
Yes, I am the weather girl again. So I can't bring it up for some reason, but Glenn Gunn says, good evening from Calgary, Alberta. Again, good evening. And says, hope you two are well. Got up to 18 degrees centigrade today, so that's good.
Yeah, it was nicer here in Mexico City as well. We used to live in Vancouver. I'm originally from Vancouver. Luckily, you lived in Mexico. So when we voted for our own independence, we were able to come to Mexico and flee the federal government because I lost absolute all hope in them. So yeah, it's good to see there's like-minded people in Alberta rather than have to leave as individuals. They can kind of say, no, we don't want to be part of Canada and we're going to keep what we have.
But here it was raining yesterday, and luckily today it's been sunny, at least close to Mexico City. So
yeah, and I will say if anybody has any super chats, we do interrupt the show and prioritize those, and we'll read them right away. So let's get into the first story here.
Alberta,
yeah.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
So yes, let's start with Alberta, as we always do, talking about how the signatures are going.
Well, and the whole show is pretty much Alberta, but we made a button, so we figured we'll use the button now in the beginning.
From Rise Alberta, Calgary, you can sign the Alberta Independence Petition at Beacon Hill Shopping Centre across from Costco. Weekdays 1 to 4 p.m. and weekends 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Bring a valid Alberta ID and also proof of residence.
Yeah, and I thought we'd profile somebody different today in the very beginning. Usually we use Marty as kind of the gauge. He didn't give an update today, so I said, let's profile somebody else. There's actually a lot of people I was trying to choose to profile, but choosing somebody in Calgary, I think, is extremely important. This is the one city the Liberals and the NDP are really trying to get a foothold in. And once Alberta gains its independence, that should be the first city we try to take back.
And also, if you haven't signed yet, please go do so as soon as possible. But also, you can find the link as to where to find all the locations down below in all of our videos and in the descriptions of the lives as well. It's stayfreealberta.com.
Yeah, and it looks like the petition is going really well, but this is going to be the final push because I believe around the 7th of next month, or a little bit before that, everything's going to be turned in because of that court filing from the First Nations. We want to play it safe and make sure there's no way to derail this movement.
And also from Paul Mitchell says, Albertans, on Saturday, March 21st, there's an Independence Spring Road Rally signature hunt leaving from Calgary, Edmonton, and Red Deer and going to Mirror with stops in many towns where you can join in. And let me try to zoom in to here because for some reason it's really dark, but you can find the maps and info again at stayfreealberta.com/how and where to sign.
Yeah, and it's good to see things like this kind of happening. This really shows it's a grassroots movement. And as the weather starts heating up, even after the signatures are kind of in and we're waiting for October, we need to keep the enthusiasm up for this thing, keep the education process up so the moderates can become educated. I was watching some other shows where there were moderates. They weren't actually sure if they wanted Alberta independence or they wanted a new deal. I don't think a new deal is even possible. The federal government is not going to negotiate. They're not going to give up their political monopoly. This is why I think Alberta independence is the right choice. But there's still those moderates we need to kind of talk to, educate. And if we have a good attitude and we're doing these spring rolls with these trucks, flags, stuff like that, it can only get more motivation going.
And that, I think, is the main thing and why we started talking about it in the first place and why we profile so many other content creators, independent journalists, because there needs to be a counter action against what the mainstream media and the paid off media will continue to say and build that narrative, because they've already started and they'll only get worse and worse. And we've also seen a lot of the cowardly attacks on canvassers, for example, by insane people.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what the strategy is going to be what the strategy is going to be to do with all the canvassers. There are over 7,000 canvassers, somewhere between 7 and 10,000 canvassers. After they get those signatures, we don't want those people to go away. They're highly committed to the movement. If people with social media channels and stuff like that can roll them in as regular guests on their show, stuff like that. I mean, these are very important people, and they did the most important work for this movement. So hopefully there is a game plan with the leadership to do something with those 7,000 people to keep morale up and education up within Alberta independence, because it's going to be quite a long little break between October 19th and when those signatures are submitted.
And our channel is always open to bring on anybody that wants to do an interview or tell us how canvassing is going. So if you know anybody or you are a canvasser and are interested in doing that, you can always send us an email or a DM through X. Yes, our DMs are open on X. Don't send gross things. But you can go to natandtheguy@gmail.com. That's our email address.
Yeah, absolutely.
And speaking of media blackouts...
Oh, 1 minute. We did do an edited video about John Bolton, actually. We finally got it out. And he was actually recommended by a lot of our viewers. So he's one of the regular sources I start watching now. Yeah. I really like him. Absolutely fantastic. The video's gotten a great response. So hopefully John sees it.
Yes. And thank you, John, as well, for all the work he has been doing on Alberta independence.
And I didn't know he used to be a radio host. You brought that up.
Yeah, I saw someone commented on our video letting us know that he used to be a radio show host. I'm guessing somewhere in Alberta or Calgary, or maybe he said he was in Ontario for a while, so maybe there. But yeah, I didn't know that he was a radio show.
Because I always watched him when I started watching him on a regular basis. Like, man, he really sounds like he should be on radio. Yeah. Go figure. He used to be on radio.
Yeah, clearly we do not.
Well, and he doesn't stutter or anything. Everything's very, very concise. And just good content from that guy.
Yeah, we don't have any training. We just started doing this and eventually with enough practice got to where we are, but we're not perfect by any means.
Well, I think
we stutter and a lot.
We're absolutely horrible. Because when we did start, it was during the trucker convoys when we made our first video at the BC border. We were going out to a lot of those rallies, trying to videotape them. We were hoping to be on camera, but man, the first couple of times we were way too scared. We ended up doing voiceovers, but eventually we got there, and I'm glad to see there's this movement of Alberta independence, and it's really, I think, linked at the hip what happened during that era of the trucker convoy. So we've kind of come full circle here.
And that is why I continue to say the truckers convoy gave me hope, and then that hope was smashed and slashed, and now this is the only thing that's giving me hope in where I used to live.
Okay, let's continue on here.
As I was saying, speaking of the media and media being as it is, from Rebel News, they're launching an independence report to break the media blackout and show Canadians what's really happening on the ground in Alberta. And like them or not, they are able to get a lot of those resources and a lot of that truth out, or other perspective aside from what the federal government and the narrative from the mainstream media continues to peddle. Yeah,
it's been a real media blackout from the national media. They don't want to talk about this. I think they're hoping they can derail the movement with the First Nations and the signatures. The signatures look like we're going to get them, so they're not going to be able to derail it, but they don't want to recognize anything until they absolutely have to. They want to kind of make it look like a fringe movement. I think this is to the benefit of Albertans. The awareness within Alberta is absolutely immense. Inside of National Canada, it's not. I was watching, and I love to watch this shitty show called The Line. It's a liberal show. I like to have debates in my head with the host because I disagree with him on absolutely everything. But he just denigrating. He briefly mentioned the Alberta independence movement. Say, yeah, there's no real hope. There's no real spark behind them. I used to live in Quebec as well, he was saying, and they're not going to separate either. What the Alberta independence movement is far different than Quebec. I think there is a ton of grassroots support. I think the federal government and national Canadians that are living in other provinces are going to be absolutely shocked when this thing starts to roll and the vote actually goes through.
And that is why I think it is important to keep things like this, what the Rebel News is doing, out in the zeitgeist, because it is bringing that other perspective and truth to what the mainstream media is trying to do.
Well, and if we remember what happened during the truckers' convoy, that was one of the largest peaceful protests in modern history. It went absolutely fantastic. They tried to change the narrative, put plants into that movement, videotape it so they could make narratives for mainstream media. And we just have to remember they're going to try the exact same things after these signatures are had with Alberta independence. We got to keep it positive, and really root out people that aren't authentically following the movement, that might be government plants and stuff like that, trying to build narratives. Marty was actually talking about that recently on an interview I seen.
And also being able to be aware of and discern that will happen. It's not, we've seen it before. We saw it during the truckers' convoy and any other thing that like-minded, common sense people try to do. It gets derailed always. So we should see this coming as well.
Well, because everybody's been through the trucker convoy and it's the same kind of group of people that are really supporting Alberta independence, and the movement's only kind of growing. It was great training for Alberta independence because there's far more on the line for Alberta independence. I mean, there was a ton on the line back then, enough to make me want to leave the country after the government kept overstepping its bounds. But with Alberta independence, I mean, it's going to be the fall of Canada once Alberta leaves. Alberta's the thing holding up Canada and holding up that country. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's continue.
That is why we will continue to see attacks like this one. From Rise of Alberta, quote, left-wing Calgary account, this was making the rounds, I think, since last week, tried to rig an Alberta independence poll. It backfired badly, even after blocking a huge amount of independent supporters from voting, including Marty up north, for example. The results still came back 64% yes on 9,053 votes.
And this was absolutely fantastic. I follow the polls that come out quite a lot, especially if the mainstream media very rarely quotes a poll. I say, okay, well, who took that poll? How many people were involved in that poll? Typically, they do polls with under 1,000 people. They make it try to seem like, oh, this is the sentiment inside of Alberta. They don't say where they actually kind of pulled everybody from. I'm guessing if it's the mainstream media or a liberal bias polling agency, they're going to Calgary. And that's why they're getting 30% polling for we want independence. I think in regular polling, you're going to see above 50% right now. I think that's where the sentiment is. I don't think it maybe be at 64, but I definitely believe it's above 50 right now, and we're only getting going.
Mm-hmm. And the count was CM Calgary. And yeah, I did see Marty up north saying that he had been blocked himself, which is insane. And it really shows the true motivation and the true trying to meddle. The meddling has already started on X, and with the information war that we're continuously seeing grow.
Well, and the reason I think it's probably around just over 50% right now and not the 64% is that particular poll right there was done online. And the people that are mainly resisting this are older white boomers. That's us. Marty's taking a lot of videos. These are the people coming out, flipping them off.
Karens.
And Karens, yeah. Mm-hmm. So these people aren't online. So you got to figure we're well over 50%. This is well ahead of any other independence movement I've researched to this point. That would be Brexit and a number of other ones.
Mm-hmm. And I continue also to say that the young people, we need to see more young people also getting involved and speaking up because it is their future, because they have this opportunity to see something historic take place and be part of it as well and build a nation, the nation they want to see, not just themselves, but their children grow up and all the opportunities that they're able to get. So it is great to see things like this from Home with Homes. This quote, this was such a beautifully written testimony given by a young Albertan sharing her thoughts on Alberta independence.
And again, we're in the opening segment, so we're talking about the petition, the sentiment, the signatures, the polling, and this is part of that. So I thought her testimony was fantastic. It's not actually her. She's reading somebody else's testimony, and this is what she does on a regular basis. She gets testimonies and reads them out. But I'm glad to see young people are not just focused on the economy here. The sentiment was completely different, and it was really focused around the political rig system within inside of Canada.
And this is part 2, but most impactful.
Hi everyone, me again. If you guys haven't seen the first video I put out reading a young Albertan's testimony on Alberta independence, go check that out on our page. I'm going to be reading another testimony that came out from a young lady on how she feels about Alberta independence. I grew up believing Canada was fair. I never really questioned it. But recently I started reading about the history of Western Canada, and I realized something strange. Many of us in the West were never actually taught this part of our history. The debates about fairness between East and West didn't start recently. They've existed for over 100 years. Some people call it Western alienation. the feeling that decisions shaping the West are often made somewhere else. I'm not saying what the answer is. I just think more people should understand the history. Canada is a democracy, which means population decides elections. Ontario and Quebec together hold the majority of seats in federal parliament. This means that in many elections, the outcome can be decided before Western votes are fully counted. For people in the West, this can create a quiet feeling. Does our vote actually change anything? It becomes a quiet question that keeps coming back, a question that, without consideration or change, leads to apathy and frustration with the system. The West produces a large share of Canada's natural resources: energy, agriculture, minerals. For generations, Western provinces have debated whether national policies treat these industries fairly. Some historians trace this tension back to the early days of Canada, when economic power was concentrated in central Canada's manufacturing base. Whether people agree or disagree today, the conversation about fairness between regions has been part of Canadian politics for over a century. Most young people simply never heard about it. When people hear the word separation, they often assume it comes from anger. But when you talk to many Western Canadians, the feeling is often something different. It's a question: does this country still feel equal for everyone? Maybe the real conversation isn't about leaving. Maybe it's about understanding why some people feel unheard in the first place. Because a country works best when every region feels like it is truly being heard equally. Maybe the real question isn't why people talk about leaving, but why so many feel unheard in the first place. What does a country owe the people who helped build its wealth? If a democracy leaves some regions feeling powerless, is it still working as intended? How long can a country stay united if parts of it feel invisible? That was such a beautifully written testimony and was given with some real genuine thought. And so if you're a young Albertan or you know any that would be willing to give a testimony because this resonates with you, because this doesn't resonate with you, because you have a different perspective, then feel free to DM us on our Instagram or any of the other platforms.
And you can leave it there. And it's absolutely fantastic that she's gathering testimonies of young Albertans and Albertans in general, reading them out. We're doing nightly news and updates. There's other people getting signatures and petitions. There's other people within Alberta that are supporting the movement, some within national Canada, some outside the country. And if censorship laws come into effect, like we see are already starting to come into effect in Canada, international content creators are going to have to really step up at that point to get the messaging out. But it was very, very good to see especially a young person focus on the unfair political system of Canada. And I think this is huge because I think there's a transitioning happening within many young people. And that's why so many are becoming conservative. They're becoming politically aware for the first time. And it started to happen during that jibby jab era, during the trucker era, when the government overstepped its bounds so many times. People really started educating themselves. And that has continued on, especially inside Alberta. You have much more politically aware youth. Now, it's strange because the older people seem to be getting less politically aware, or at least a lot of them, the liberals.
Well, because they've continued to trust mainstream media and they've continued to just think that Canada has stayed the same as when they were young. And then very few have noticed. And I don't know, we have some people here that have noticed and that have seen that change and that are concerned. And that is why they want to vote to become independent. But with young people especially, and we're not just seeing this maybe in Alberta because the rest of Canada is insane, but in other countries too, where they have, in Western countries too, where they have been barraged with the woke mind virus throughout their whole school career and their whole school curriculum and up to university. And the only way to counteract that now, the rebellious way to do it, is to reject it and to become more conservative, more religious, more et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I think liberal ideology has really backfired. They try to get rid of a unifying identity. And what happened was people aren't as interested in movies. People aren't interested in superstars and music. People aren't looking to these celebrities like previous generations. I remember in my generation, superstars were big at that time. You don't have unifying superstars. You have people that appeal to a little demographic here and a little demographic there. A lot of the superstars even today are people from my generation that are extremely old now. And when that unifying identity kind of crumbled, people stopped looking to the culture. They started looking to politics, a lot of them. And that's why politics is really having a resurgence right now.
In a good and a bad way, I will say.
Yeah, definitely.
Because a lot of politics has now also turned, unfortunately, into celebrity culture, basically. Just what it used to be, the gossip, the celebrity gossip, and a lot of random things that I won't get into right now. But in a sense, yes, and it is that same thing of having wanted the liberal mind, having wanted to divide it and divide by identities rather than that unifying identity that now I think a lot of young people are seeking, and that can also be used in a positive way for Alberta independence.
Well, and that's the thing. When you look at the entire United States, politics can become polarizing and stuff like this. But when you look at Alberta independence, there's an entire 100-year history. And that was brought up by that last young person's testimony. So really leaning on the history of the mistreatment of Alberta over the last 100 years is going to really be another sticking point that the Federalists aren't going to be able to combat. And I say this almost every show, but Pierre Poilievre, Jason Kenney, Danielle Smith are all trying, and even a lot of national liberals are trying to frame this in the box of economics. Because in the end, if this Alberta independence movement gets far enough, they're going to throw all kinds of oil contracts, oil pipelines, natural resource contracts, and Alberta and say, we fixed it. As long as they can frame it inside economics, they can say, we fixed it inside of economics. But that's not the case. It's the real issues are far deeper than economics. It's the cultural issues, and there's a ton of them. Canada's headed over there. Alberta's headed over there. I mean, maybe Calgary wants to go that way, but it's up to Alberta to kind of save Calgary.
And also that is why that beginning statement from that Jason Kenney Bruce Party debate was so good by Bruce Party, Professor Party, because he was able to not just focus on economics while Jason Kenney was just going to there to talk about economics and how Alberta can be saved within Canada.
Well, Jason Kenney did focus on a couple of cultural issues, but it was really gaslighting when he talked about it. It was absolutely ridiculous. He was talking about the loyalty Albertans need to have as Canadians and talking about Team Canada as a hockey team. It's like Canada turned its back on Alberta a long time ago, and trying to talk about cultural issues like we're still part of Canada and we want to be part of Canada and there's this long history that we cherish. No, not anymore. In the last decade has just been really an abusive marriage, and Alberta's been treated like the doormat. No more.
And I will say, yes, Alberta specifically with how the whole political system is rigged, but also Canada has turned its back on Canadians in general.
Yeah.
It doesn't care about it doesn't want its citizens anymore. And Albertans are the only ones that are standing up and are able to do something about it.
Yeah,
at
absolutely.
least right now. Should I read some comments?
Oh, yeah, let's go. Wait, how many more? What story are we on right now?
We finished the first section.
Oh, we did. Okay,
Yes.
Let's read some comments and then we'll press the Alberta button again, because then we're going to get into Albertan independence news rather than just the petition.
Yes. Rafa, hello, Rafa, says, hello, feeling better, Nat. Kind of. We did do a show yesterday, which was more focused on geopolitics, Alberta at the beginning, but then we went to do geopolitics and we didn't see you there, but thank you for being here.
But you are going to do a show tonight in Spanish,
Yes,
right?
I am replacing the Monday show I missed with tonight. So there will be a show tonight in Spanish. The Spanish channel is linked down below if anybody wants to go see me speak in Spanish.
And a lot of our Alberta followers or people that are watching us from Alberta now that recently started watching us might not know who Rafa is, but Rafa is our most longtime viewer.
Yes.
He's been through
The most important.
everything with the channel. We actually have two channels, one in Spanish, one in English. And yeah, he's really been our most dedicated follower. He used to be the only one that used to leave comments, and it really helped us to keep going when, when you only have one or two people watching you on live, it's really hard.
Yeah, he means a lot to this channel. So thank you, Rafa. And let us know how things are going, if you know what I mean. Rafa says, nice tie, guy. That color is smooth as possible.
Yeah, I actually really like the color of this tie. You'll see Trump and JD Vance typically wear this with a dark blue suit, and it looks good. But
You're missing the suit.
that's why when we went to the store, I was like, oh yeah, that's the perfect tie.
Because you were looking
Christmas.
for a red one, but
this is the red I actually wanted.
That's maroon.
like-
Which here in Mexico, that's not a good color to wear because that's Morena, the current government that's in power's party. So you don't want to wear that around outside.
Well, and you also don't want to wear it around Candace Owens, the maroon team. They're all government operatives.
Edward says, hi, Nat. Hi, Guy. Hello, Edward. Thank you for being
Good to
here.
see you. Thank you for everybody
And
that is here.
Yes. Glenn Gunn says, John Bolton. Great.
Yeah.
Yes, he is great. Tin Man says, you two are doing a great job. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here as well. Glenn Gunn says, there are canvassers in Mexico. Yes, mostly around Puerto Vallarta. We have been highlighting those when there's been signatures or some information about canvassers down here in Mexico, and we will continue to do so.
Yeah, and a lot of the
next weeks.
canvassers are in the kind of the beach cities because they are the snowbirds, so they want the warm weather. We're in Mexico City, which is way up in the mountains. It's actually one of the
We
highest
don't get that many
elevations.
tourists.
But that being said, everybody doing their part is really what's going to take. That girl getting the testimonial, the other girl giving her testimonial, us doing nightly news. John Bolton does nightly news too. He also goes to the ground to show how things are going with whether it's spring rolls with the trucks or it's people getting signatures. So, I mean, it's nice to see this grassroots effort of everybody's just choosing to do what they want to do.
Or what they can do.
And I think the nationalists can't wrap their heads around it right now. They're trying to do research on figuring out, well, who's the leadership of this? There is no real one leader. It's a decentralized movement. There are people that do have an outsized role, but even if you take that person out for some reason, there's no really stopping Alberta independence. And I think it's one of the most well-organized independence movements in Canada, and it's really setting the framework for Saskatchewan. I wish I could say BC as well, but
BC is insane.
They're already trying to block a BC independence movement. They don't want to lose BC, and that's why you're seeing all these land grabs and ceding of territory from the federal government back to the Indigenous. It's going to be extremely hard for an independence movement to succeed in BC. I know they are trying to form one right now, though.
Glenn Gunn says you mean Edmonton. I don't remember what. Oh, maybe John Bolton?
No,
I don't know where I meant Edmonton, but
I've been talking about Calgary and how Calgary's going way too liberal, and it's really allowing liberals in the NDP to get a foothold, which they can expand out from there. Because if they capture Calgary and then they only have one other city they have to capture, Edmonton, and then you have a BC type situation where you have the majority of the population in Victoria and Vancouver, and that decides elections for BC. And then you get David Eby in there, which is giving away the province, giving away private property rights. Absolutely ridiculous. We're originally from BC, so it just upsets me what's happening in BC right now.
Glenn Gunn says, young people in Alberta are rising up. I watched many being interviewed that are talking to their classmates. And good. And again, I think that sentiment is way deeper than a lot of, especially liberals, realize because they have rotted their brains for so long. They're looking to break free out of that. And when you rebel against the adults that have been telling you how things are and indoctrinating you into how things are. So the rebellion is now to become, in a way, more conservative.
The young people are going to be very easy to get on our side. I think it's a very easy argument to make. Older people...
Your future.
Older people may be a little bit harder, but the thing is, this particular channel has a lot of older people that do watch it, and there is already a big cohort that, even though if they don't see this thing out to the end, because even after you get your independence, it's going to take quite a while to get the foothold under the nation, but they're going to vote for independence because they want a better future for their children and their grandchildren. The hardest cohort to get is that middle class that is working a lot, that aren't politically educated. But I think the best weapon we have against that is British Columbia and what's happening with private property rights, because that particular cohort is the ones that have mortgages and are interested in private property, and they don't want to see what's happening in BC happen in Alberta. One way to guarantee that is Alberta independence.
And thank you so much, Rava, for the 50 pesos super chat. You're very kind. And he says, you two are so sweet. Thanks for the kind words. Thank you for still being here.
Yeah.
And for your patience, especially with the Spanish channel, which I have kind of abandoned right now because I've been mostly doing Alberta independence stuff. I will come back to Spanish too. He says, you're awesome. Thank you. And also says, we're just waiting. It could happen anytime. And that is very exciting. Things are happening for Rafa in the very near future now. And I want to keep on top of it.
Okay, let's keep going here.
We have more. We have a lot of comments.
Okay, let's read 4 more comments, and then we're going to go into the main stories of the day.
Primores 007 says, 2 smart girls in that family. Parents raised them right, for sure. And in Canada right now, the parents are the only ones that are able to raise their kids properly, because when you let the government or the schools, which is the same thing, raise them, nothing good can come out of that, unless they rebel and realize.
A lot of people don't know what's happening, and I didn't know the extent to what was happening even, and I do a geopolitics show, but I know the UK was trying to ban homeschooling, and that's starting to go forward, but many EU countries already banned homeschooling. With the rise of AI, I think traditional education is going to play a different role, and the government wants to use these places as indoctrination centers.
More than they already do.
So they want to get rid of homeschooling because that's an alternative so they can't capture every mind within a nation.
And Ruckin
Just read the
Ruckin,
comment.
I will say Ruckin says, pretty sure Alberta will be just fine on its own. Now, who's ready to vote? Well, anybody that hasn't, go run and go find the locations soon.
Yeah,
Because it's
absolutely.
coming to that date.
And I really think there needs to be a big effort put into Calgary. I think there's a lot of NDP voters and Liberal voters there. That city's becoming captured. But as far as Alberta independence goes, I think a lot of them would be willing to vote for independence if they understood the economics. And I think economics is the way to sway Liberals, not cultural issues. I think cultural issues on a national scale works for national Conservatives. And I believe those talking points in those debates are going to become crucially important to make sure the government can't just throw a goodie bag of tricks or contracts at Alberta independence and say, we fixed it. So the cultural... There's multiple debates and multiple arguments that have to be made to different groups. Luckily, there is a large cohort of people supporting Alberta independence right now, all focusing on different things.
And independent-minded people, too.
Yeah.
So not captured by the mind virus. Primoris 007 says, hit the likes, folks. Thank you so much. And yes, it really does help as well to get out the stream to more people.
Likes and subscribes do help us because we broadcast out of Mexico City and we're trying to hit primarily an Alberta audience, but I guess more broadly a Canadian audience because it's going to become important that people outside of Alberta support the movement in the U.S. as well. Luckily, we used to talk a lot of American geopolitics, so we had a little bit of an American following. So I'm hoping to activate people within America after the vote takes place to really start talking about Alberta independence.
And that they all know, like, from before what was going on and how the things were moving even before it became more mainstream news.
Yeah, because of Americans, even if they don't have their own political shows or something like that, the shows that they watch, if they start putting in the comments, talk about Alberta independence, content creators will start talking about it. Glenn Beck already interviewed Keith Wilson, who every show I say it, but he's got my vote for president if Alberta gets its independence.
Especially because he doesn't want to be president. That's the most honest person you can find, the one that doesn't want to be involved in politics. Ruckin, I'm just going to say Ruckin says, poll who is for Alberta independence, press 1 for 1 for and 2 against, and of course everybody's pressing 1. I'm just showing all the ones. Glenn Gunn says I already signed. Primoris says one of the first to sign in Calgary. That's good. Calgary is one of the ones that needs it the most. Anonymous also says 1.
Yeah, and I was just kind of thinking about, Calgary is going to be very important because there's going to be a lot of moderate voters in there, people that typically wouldn't vote for Alberta independence. After we secure the signatures, there's a long time in there. If a lot of people that were petitioning in there put educational booths, sit on the ground, willing to just talk to people with a sign that are typically going to be against it, but can always be polite to the people they're talking to, you're going to be able to shift sentiment where even if they're against it, they might not come out to the polls to vote against it. So I think Calgary is, because it's so densely packed areas is where you can make huge differences when it comes to education and petitions. Less so petitions when it comes to Calgary, I guess, because it's so liberal, it's so NDP minded. But when you go into economic education, I think it would be really important, especially in the summertime.
Yeah. Let me just read 2 more because those were all
2 more, and then we get into the stories.
It was just ones. Primoris 007 says, Guy tie fail. Nat, you need to approve the tie selection going forward. I'm not his mother. I don't dress him.
She bought my tie.
I bought it for him, and he gets to decide whatever he wants to put on himself.
It was a Christmas present, but I only like a certain kind of tie, and that's skinny ties.
Yeah.
So we went, in Mexico, they don't sell skinny ties. So we had to search forever. We finally found
likes
it.
those ugly, thick ones.
Yeah.
But I learned a long time ago as a wife that he needs to choose whatever gift he's going to get because it's impossible to give him something without sight unseen because he will not like it.
Yeah. And I always like camera stuff or anything like that because I used to do a lot of photography.
Yes. And ON5, I will say, says, hey guys, watching in from Ontario. Wow, you're really in the thick of it. Just started watching this week, but look forward to hanging around. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for everybody that has started watching the show and subscribe. And thanks for everybody that has reposted the show.
Yes.
It really helps because our reach within Canada and Alberta is being severely compromised. That's obvious at this point.
And I realized when we were trying to repost it on X as well, it didn't get much traction from our account, at least when we were doing it.
And I might not have said it today. So before we get into the stories, starting on Monday, I'm going to have a companion to the show show, and that's going to be our X account. Every single article we talk about on the show will be posted or reposted on our X account. So you can kind of follow along, or if you can't watch the show, you're going to know the major stories. It's primarily going to be all Alberta news. We do a geopolitics show on Tuesday, but we put Alberta first there. So there will be a little bit of geopolitics mixed into the feed as well. But if you can subscribe there, we really haven't built up our X to this point. So starting Monday, it's really going to get built out. And if you want to know where to go get Alberta Independence news, maybe subscribe to our X account. Okay, let's go.
Do you want me to press the Alberta button again or no?
Yeah, press the Alberta button again because it's going to allow us to bookmark for chapters later on.
Okay. So the first one was Alberta Petition news, and now it's Alberta news just by itself.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
And we will make 2 buttons eventually. So it's Alberta Independence news broadly now. Let's get into it.
From Adam McVicker. That's an interesting name. Quote, the Calgary Stampede has unveiled its 20-year master plan. The plan includes 7 distinct zones across the park, a new live event space on the side of the Saddle Dome, and replacements for the Big 4 building and agriculture building. Yeah,
absolutely fantastic to see this. And the only place within Canada that is thriving is Alberta. You got the Hockey World Cup coming in 2028. Fantastic that bid got won by Alberta. The Flames and the Oilers really came together to make that thing happen, along with the province of Alberta. But this is another thing. You don't see things like this really growing within the rest of Canada. They'll talk about it and then they'll never break ground on it, or they'll never get it done. Economics is really hurting the rest of Canada. That being said, go back to that really quick. That is Calgary, and I've been talking a lot about Calgary. Calgary is captured, but with the Calgary Stampede, the culture is still there for conservatism.
And for just traditional patriotic things that they used to do, and they've been doing for a long time.
International immigrant implants and other province implants that are liberals that are going to Calgary for work are really turning that place very, very liberal. So I think the Calgary Stampede plays an important part of the cultural heart of not just Calgary, but all of Alberta.
And however, Ottawa is trying to control at least a little bit of Alberta still, because from Kim Bexley.
Oh, this was crazy.
Quote, Ottawa permanently bans paddleboarding on several Albertan lakes. Not Alberta, Ottawa.
And like with forest bans going on in other provinces, and as Mark Carney looks like he's headed towards a majority government, I really hate to say it, he wants to federalize Canada. What that means is you're going to start taking more and more sovereignty away from each province, put it in the federal government's hands, and they're going to make decisions like this, which is absolutely ridiculous. This is one of those cultural issues that I said, we don't want the government meddling in paddleboards in lakes in Alberta, but it's not just paddleboards in lakes. That's just a stunning example of overreach and over government regulations.
And they're saying they're doing it to control invasive species, yet they want to control it on water, but not on land. On land, invasive species are let in through the border without question.
Okay, but let's talk about that for a minute, because long before we were covering Alberta independence, when we very, very first started covering Canadian politics, we covered this guy that was rowing upstream in a very remote lake within Canada.
In BC.
And he came across 2 guys in hazmat suits, gas masks, dumping buckets of toxic chemicals into the river. And then there was a RCMP officer there guarding the 2 with a firearm. And then he came up and he goes, like, what are you guys doing? And then the whole thing ended up coming out in a huge scandal. What happened is they were poisoning the rivers in BC to get rid of invasive species. The problem was when they were dumping the poison in the river, it was killing everything in the river. And that's Canadian federal government logic in general. We have one problem, so let's create 1,000 problems so then we can take advantage of that and fill our pockets with money.
To solve it.
Yeah, because they're having to actually fund things like that, and they overfund it and then line their own pockets.
Okay. Wouldn't be surprised if they try something similar there.
But yeah, there's a video on our original channel about
which is my Spanish channel now.
And luckily the guy just happened to have a cell phone and decided to row up on these guys in hazmat suits and record them and start asking questions.
Yeah, all our old videos you can always find in our Spanish channel, which is called Nada en tu idioma. It's linked down below if you're ever interested in seeing us be very awkward.
Well, and then just click on oldest videos because they were the first
Yeah,
videos.
go to oldest instead of latest.
Okay, let's continue here.
Continuing on from Jeff Routh, quote, liberal activists have nothing better to do other than to misread audited documents and speculate over the names of Albertans who support Alberta independence, because Dwayne Brad said, Jen Gerson says, quote, who gave the Alberta Prosperity Society $1 million?
First of all, $1 million isn't a lot when you're raising money amongst this big of a group. And they did the exact same tactics during the truckers convoy, and that's how they were able to freeze bank accounts. They said there's too much foreign money coming in. This is foreign interference. This can't be a grassroots movement. They're trying to set up the ground or the narrative and the foundation for the same thing. I'm not going to be surprised if they start canceling bank accounts and doing the same underhanded tactics they did during the truckers convoy.
And I see it happening way sooner than I think a lot of people are speculating. Unfortunately.
Definitely. But again, the Alberta independence movement, because it's gone through so much political strife with the trucker convoy, with the Jibby Jab, it's a very political aware group of individuals. And when Danielle Smith tried to muddy the waters with all these other questions on the ballot, she was called out that same day.
We called her out that same day.
I don't think she was expecting to be called out. I think she was expecting to be praised and for nobody to notice. Albertans are just way too smart for it. Typically, stuff like that, people don't notice until she wants to actually implement. Oh, it wasn't clear. The question wasn't clear. We're going to have to do another ballot.
Yeah.
So,
Speaking of Danielle Smith, she's on this video from Juno News, quote, Alberta is tackling RCMP service gaps with a 5-year funding phase-in and new options, local policing, sheriff detachments, or partnering with nearby forces. Most rural detachments pay for far more than they receive, says Premier Smith, citing vacancies and long waiting times. I mean, this is just a whole...
Yeah, and as far as I could understand this, I think this goes into funding the sheriff's departments in Alberta so Alberta can control its own police force. I hope I'm understanding it right, and she's not trying to actually fund the RCMP itself. Alberta having its own police force is extremely important, and it's going to make Alberta independence a lot easier when it comes to negotiations with the federal government if you're controlling most of your police.
Because I believe that was one of the campaign promises from Danielle Smith, to make Alberta policing independent from RCMP.
Yeah, and that was coming up in the news a lot, so I think the statement has to do with that as far as I understood. If I'm wrong, let me know.
We have no control over the RCMP negotiation. And we did try to warn you, I know going back to Tyler Shandro, that because of the decisions the federal government made, it was increasing the cost of RCMP 57% without any increase in service. And so that's part of the reason why we've gone down a pathway of giving you other options. Some of you may be perfectly happy with the kind of service that you're getting in your community. Maybe you don't have a lot of vacancies in your community and you feel very well served and by the RCMP. That is not the case in most of the rural detachments I talk to. In most of the rural areas, you are paying for far more than you are receiving.
And there are a ton of federal DEI policies in these RCMP within the RCMP. So if you create your own Alberta Sheriff's Department, you're going to be able to set your own policies, hiring policies, firing policies, and stuff like this. I give Danielle Smith a hard time on a lot of things, but this is one thing that I think is rather good.
Vacancies and they are not getting backfilled. And you are having call times that either are too long or do not show up altogether. And I know I've heard some pretty terrible stories from down my neck of the woods of the Cypress County as well. So I would just put it to you. We had some members around the cabinet table that wanted to go back to the original funding arrangement of you paying 30% immediately. And we just said, whoa, that'll be a huge sticker shock. And we don't think municipalities can afford that. There are some who wanted to phase it in over 3 years. But I can tell you, Mike and I agreed it should be 5 years because that gives you time to see if there's a more affordable policing model that you want to look at. And I can tell you Grand Prairie went down this journey. They are implementing their model 2 years early. So it took 3 years to get to that point. They have 90 officers, I believe, on staff. They'll have another 110 that'll be coming on stream in October, which will allow for those RCMP officers to be redeployed. And I have asked Mike to find out where the priority is to redeploy those officers so that we can try to backfill some of the detachments that are under service. So that will be an option for you. But their assessment was they could get more policing for the same budget by doing it locally. And so you have options. You can stay with what you've got, but now you know that there's a 5-year phase-in and that we have no control over what RCMP are paid. We also are creating our Alberta Sheriff's Police Service, and that will give another option. And there's 2 municipalities who want us to set up sheriff detachments. And so as soon as that's been established, and I think we're doing the big lift in June, we have the ability to open up sheriff detachments. If you want to talk to Mike about that. Your third option is
and if she really funds a lot of sheriff detachments, that's going to hopefully be able to lead way to negotiations to defunding the RCMP and having minimal RCMP officers. And primarily, it's all local policing done by Albertans.
To work with an adjacent municipality, because 80% of our municipalities are governed already by a municipal police force. So whether it's Calgary or Edmonton or Taber or Lacombe or Camrose, maybe they can also police out into the rural areas. Medicine Hat, Lethbridge, I know I don't have all of them, but
okay,
that's
and you
another
can leave
potential
it there.
option.
And I just kind of wanted to give an update on that because things are starting to see movement when it comes to Alberta sheriffs and RCMP. I will say this. I used to be a paramedic, and a lot of my friends were paramedics. I never actually followed it through. I did private paramedics. I used my certificate to work on an oil pipeline and stuff like that privately because
You've had like a billion jobs.
Because it made more money. I did it. Well, a lot of them are seasonal in and out. So, and it paid well. That being said, paramedics are dramatically underpaid in British Columbia. I don't know the situation in Alberta, but hopefully they're not getting paid $2 an hour when they don't get a call like it is in BC. They actually passed special legislation that they can so they could illegally pay new paramedics. It's ridiculous what's happening there. But the paramedic situation in BC, I know happens across a lot of Canada. I'm not sure about the exact model Alberta's using though.
Now let's go to one of your favorite people, I know, because I read the comments, Naneshi, from the breakdown, quote, Naneshi...
Before we read the thing...
Okay.
Naneshi knows they want to replace him with the female from the NDP, and she's making waves. She's supposed to be the replacement. So he's trying to make waves anytime he gives a public statement, anytime there's a photo op. When he did the photo op with the First Nations, he's trying to get his job and regain relevance with inside the NDP in Alberta.
Naneshi just revealed that not only do any of the people Smith claimed to have met in the U.S. have any record of her, but when she greeted Trump at the G7, he had no idea who she was. This is after her taxpayer-paid trips to Mar-a-Lago and PragerU.
Yeah, I think this is absolutely ridiculous, and I'll talk about why I think it's ridiculous. He's framing it very carefully with his words, I think.
Was one YouTube video worth $20,000. Now, last year I sat in the gallery, and the Premier spent nearly 2 minutes detailing a list of every American official that she had met in her advocacy.
Sorry, is one YouTube video worth $20,000? I don't know. You're the one that spent billions of dollars with inside Calgary and almost bankrupted that city. Absolutely ridiculous. Him trying to call out Danielle Smith on this, but let's continue on here.
And I thank the Premier for giving us that list because my staff actually contacted every one of them. Every single person the Premier said she met last time. And through the chair, I will tell you that not one of them has a record of a meeting with this Premier. Not one. And we know that the President Trump didn't recognize her on the tarmac when she greeted him at the G7. Was one YouTube video worth
and
20?
It was interesting the way he phrased that. He said, we contacted every single one. He didn't say whether they said they met with her or not. He said, he probably asked them, did you meet with her? If they said yes, then he said, oh, do you have a record of that? And then they would say, well, no, we met at Mar-a-Lago. So you can meet with somebody, not have a record of it, and then phrase it as, oh, they never had a record, but they could have very well met.
But also, I'd love to know how much that little investigation he did into this cost him and all the staff that he said he had working on that.
Well, it's absolutely fantastic when she did go down to Mar-a-Lago. I mean, other conservatives didn't want to go down there. They wanted to create distance. But Alberta in general has a great working relationship with the current Trump administration. This is going to become crucial if Alberta gets its independence. But even if it doesn't get its independence, I could definitely see Donald Trump, or if a J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio takes over after, they only want what's in Western Canada. They don't really need what's in Eastern Canada. They may want to make arrangements and agreements, North American free trade agreements with Alberta alone, or maybe Alberta and Saskatchewan, and leave the rest of Canada out of it.
Because the rest of Canada is pretty much useless.
Yeah.
Sorry. Not sorry.
Well, John Bolton was talking about Quebec. That was hilarious, the clip we played of him. He's like, Quebec's the boil on the ass of Canada. And it's so true.
Yep. Speaking of wasting money, from Blaine Calkins says, quote, liberal gun grab has now ballooned to, of course, $1 billion. with roughly 60,000 to 65,000 firearms expected to be compensated for or turned in. That's around 16,000 per firearm. And how does the government, and what does the government have to show for it? A costly program delivering virtually no real public safety benefit for Canadians because they're going after legal gun owners, not the criminals.
But we talk about this quite a lot, and this is a reoccurring story. I brought it up because a lot of times when there's reoccurring stories, I'm thinking about it on my own, like what's going on here. Originally, I was thinking, they're trying to line politicians' pockets and overfunding this, and I think that has a lot to do with it. But if they're willing to spend that much money on it, there's going to be a lot of backlash. They're trying to get backlash from the Canadian public. You're spending billions, but you're not able to actually confiscate these firearms. I think there's going to be a much harder grab at some point. And I think that's part of the reason and why I don't trust Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe. He's talking about, well, we're going to pass new laws saying that you don't have to turn in your firearms until the federal government is willing to pay fair price, but you have to register with the provincial government. Then they have a list of everybody and what kind of guns they have. So when they are willing to pay full price, then you are going to have to turn it in or you're going to be a felon.
Well, they already kind of do have a list for the legal gun owners, but still.
Not all of them, no.
I think if you're legal, you should, but.
Okay, what you think and what's the law is two different things.
Okay. He doesn't like it when I try to correct him. Moving on. From John Alberta Patriot says, quote, an Indigenous Albertan just said this straight up. Her people are living in poverty. The leaders speaking for them don't even live on their reserves. There's no accountability. And she says corruption is part of the problem. It is always the problem. This is why she supports Alberta independence. This is a perspective you're not hearing. And I think it's a perspective that is more and more important each day almost.
Well, yeah. And this was a different segment from the same interview we showed on yesterday's show. And it's a very important opinion. And she's really just saying it in a different way. This was a very long interview. And I'm glad people are starting to clip this now because having First Nations come out and really support Alberta independence is going to help prevent that national narrative they're going to want to create.
This is
especially next month when that court case comes up from First Nations.
And then, sorry, I was going to say, and this is at Katie Rocks sharing the story.
I support Alberta independence for my people, for my family, for my grandkids.
Well, and this is what the big accusation is right now is that the chiefs are corrupt and they're, these people who are going to the king right now in the United Kingdom, they're not representing Indigenous people and their voice, like they just want to keep patting their pockets. So can you speak more to that?
Just look at a reserve in Alberta.
Yeah.
Just look at a reserve in Alberta and tell me who the chiefs care about.
Yeah.
Because you can go to the chief's house, which is probably not on the reserve.
Yeah.
But you go and look at the reserve and you see how the people live.
It's squalor.
And that will tell you like why we need change. We've been doing this for over 100 years, almost 100 years. And we need change. The people live in poverty. My family lives in poverty. I support Alberta. And
I think they want to. I think it's time for First Nations to start kind of standing up. They want to take a vote, maybe not for independence from their tribes, but fairity in their tribes, fairness in their tribes, because the elites have been running over them for generations now. I will say that video I was getting when he talked, it was one ear and then the other ear for her.
Because I think the way he did the microphones was probably he split it. He did a two-way split for each microphone and then didn't merge them. You usually have to merge them so you get clear sound on both.
It was still a great interview, so I'm not complaining.
Okay. From YEG Wave says, quote, we have received footage from the train and semi-truck crash near Tabor today. Or Tabor?
Yeah, and when I first seen this, I actually had seen this yesterday, and I thought it was AI, so I didn't grab it. And then come to find out it wasn't AI.
Holy shit!
Sorry.
Holy shit!
And is there any more information about that or no?
No, but I kind of seen another angle. Somebody else filmed it and you couldn't tell, but there's incidents like this happening all the time because of foreign truck drivers that are buying their licenses.
And in Vancouver, this is a huge problem, especially with the Chinese community that just don't know how to drive, but they have contacts within the licensing, the ICBC, so they get their license right away.
Yeah, absolutely massive. So I don't know if that's exactly what happened in that incident, but very, very likely. And even if that's not that exact incident, that
Still an issue.
it's a major issue with inside of Canada.
I remember in Vancouver a few years ago, we kept seeing cars, very nice cars, ending up on stairwells, on streets, on random places, on the beach, because people don't really know how to drive, but they're able to get their licenses just so they can parade around in a very expensive car that they don't know how to drive, and then they drive into the ocean.
Yeah.
Which happened multiple times.
And I will say this, even though there is a big problem with foreign drivers, when the trucker protest did happen within BC, and we were going out to the British Columbia borders multiple times, the Sikh community was really coming out and supporting the trucker movement, and they were bringing out hot food every day so people could stay at the borders and maintain a presence there 24 hours a day. So I did appreciate that. I just don't agree with people paying for their licenses and then incidents like this start to happen on a national scale. That it's happening a lot in the US as well. I know we were covering that when we were covering international politics.
Yes. Should I read some comments?
We went quite a while.
Primoris 007 says, we don't need all of BC. Nobody does. Lower Mainland can stay with Canada. Interior is free to join the new republic. Yeah, just isolate them from the rest of Canada, but make them still be part of Canada.
Yeah, that's nice. And the sentiment is there from people that live in the interior and in northern BC. The issue is going to be they're ceding a lot of land, so that can't happen. I think that's the government strategy right now. 95% of land currently has land claims. I think in quick succession, the government's going to start ceding lands and making treaties, especially when it comes to other ports along the coast, further up the coast.
Glenn Gunn says, no liberals in Calgary. Well, at the moment, there's too many, I think. But hopefully one day their minds will change. Their eyes will open, or they will leave.
Well, you just need to stop the amount of liberal transplants into Calgary and foreign transplants into Calgary, which the national media is really indoctrinating them into. And once Alberta is on its own, you can really shut off Canadian mainstream media. So these people aren't getting indoctrinated into that same old politics that they used to be.
Yep. And Albertan, thank you so much to support Nat and Guy by liking. Yes, it really does help, and it's free. Mark says, hi from Hinton, Alberta. Hello, thank you for being here. Primors 007 says it's all in the northeast of Calgary, basically a colony of India there. Well, very similar to parts of Vancouver again, Vancouver is already pretty much segmented into Surrey, Richmond, and the signs even change when you drive into Richmond or drive into Surrey.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is a lot more dangerous because it's an Indian conclave. And when you look at the immigration stats, it's outsized. It's India, and then China way down, and then everybody else. It's not normal immigration where it's even immigration from a lot of different countries. It's all India. And if they have already set up a conclave, they're going to want their family members to start moving there. Within British Columbia, you have Surrey, so they're trying to bring their family members to Surrey. But Richmond has the same issue with Chinese immigrants. They all move to Richmond, and all the signs in Richmond, if you've ever been there, they're all in Mandarin. A lot of times you go into the business, they don't even speak English, and it'll be a restaurant, and you just don't know what kind of business you're stepping in. When you do, you can't even communicate with the people inside. So a lot of people just choose not to go to Richmond.
And for the longest time, there were all communities living with each other, the multiculturalism dream. But nowadays, this is where it leads and this is where it ends. It's just back to self-segregation, basically.
Well, and you need and I constantly say this, you need a unifying identity that immigrants can adopt. And if Alberta becomes its own independent nation, having a unifying identity and kind of reaching out, because that conclave's still going to be there. Those people are already citizens within Canada and are going to be citizens of Alberta, but really reaching out to have them adopt a larger cultural identity outside of their original Indian identity.
Because for the longest time, it was because of guilt, self-imposed guilt upon Canadians that they let their culture disappear. And so when new people came in, they had no unifying identity to go to buy into or build into.
Well, so then, and especially when you have large numbers of immigrants, so because there's no unifying identity, and as more and more come, their identity becomes the unifying identity because it's the strongest identity within the region. Okay, let's continue on.
Deloria says, it's like I'm running a stalker. Let's go, Alberta. And the stalker is running right behind you. And also says, Alberta free, free Alberta. And yes, continue. And let's continue to work towards that until the end. Until Alberta
absolutely.
is free.
And this is the last little run. And I know the weather's fairly good right now. Storms are supposed to come in and it's going to get a little colder. So now's a really good time to hopefully get petitions. But even when the weather does get bad, again, letting people know they have petitioners that will come out to your house now.
Rafa says, don't listen to him. That tie is cool. Thank you, Rafa. And Rakin says, now we have a big Spanish population in Alberta. Will you mention Alberta independence on your Spanish channel? That's what I kind of was saying today. But now there's a big news within Mexico. But I think I've just been talking too much about Mexico. I might just go into, well, what the hell has happened to Canada, because I've hinted here and there and I've spoke about it here and there. But I think maybe a whole show tonight might be important. The thing is, a lot of the posts and a lot of the things that I could show are in English, so the translation part of it takes a long time. But
yeah, one of my really good friends within Vancouver was Camilo, and I think he was Chilean, and he was originally from Alberta. So say hi to him if he's watching. But really good guy from Alberta, and yeah, there is definitely a Spanish community there. And I'll say this. America for a long time was really lucky. They got a lot of their immigrants from Mexico, and there was a cultural alliance there because a lot of Mexico is Catholic and
82% of Mexico,
and the United States is Christian. So they have that same moral foundation that kind of links them up and allows them to kind of unify over time. Europe's going through a completely different kind of immigration.
A conquest.
Well, yeah, Islam doesn't necessarily integrate the best into Western culture in Europe.
Doesn't integrate.
Yeah.
That's what I will say.
So,
and now it's similar to what's happening in Canada too.
Yeah. Well, and that's why if Alberta gets its independence, you're a rich country with great jobs. If you do want to go down the path of some immigration, you can pick and choose what countries you want. Pick and choose the countries that are culturally similar, that have the same moral foundation that Alberta kind of has.
And that will help build, not take.
Yeah.
Barry says, great show, thank you. Says, I'm from Saskatchewan. Oh, we're planning on also supporting that independence movement as soon as it gets going.
Yeah, we're really hoping the Saskatchewan movement starts to get going a lot more. And I've been researching a lot more about the Saskatchewan independence movement. The big problem I see is they don't have the same kind of magnetism with their leadership, such as Keith Wilson and a few of the other leaders. But that can be solved, especially because Keith Wilson and other people in Alberta are kind of building the framework. So it will make it easier for Saskatchewan. But the sentiment in Saskatchewan is, I heard it's far more set on independence. Even that Liberal show I was watching earlier that I just watched so I know their talking points was saying the sentiment in Saskatchewan is that of separation even more than Alberta. They're just letting Alberta go first. And I think it's the right game plan to let Alberta go first, do the framework. If they succeed, Saskatchewan can do the same thing, but then make improvements on what Alberta did. And if anything's failed, they can kind of leave those parts out. So they'll have a very likely high success rate.
And continues, we will, I'm guessing, be on Alberta's heels once they have their successful vote in October.
Yeah, and I really hope so. And we're going to do full coverage of Saskatchewan when it does happen. Mm-hmm. And we talk very openly and honestly on this channel. I know a lot of other independence channels kind of try to avoid any problems or roadblocks because they think, oh, that's going to derail the movement. I think the complete opposite. I think talking about the problems and issues helps you game plan for that. So when it does come up, you're able to pivot and move the chess pieces around the board in an appropriate manner because you are well prepared.
And you've seen it coming, and you know the different avenues it could come. The multiple avenues. I will say that that the hits will come.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people in Alberta like our coverage because we talk about the issues. I think people in Saskatchewan will as well. I don't think people in Quebec are necessarily going to like our coverage because I've already done an analysis on Quebec, and I don't see how independence is going to work for them. They take so much welfare from the federal government. Also, don't get me wrong, I'm still going to support Quebec independence if they ever get it going, but they've been so addicted to the welfare system of remittance payments from Canada, and they're so ideologically captured on the left, even though they have natural resources, they're unwilling to actually access them or use them. Yep. So unless they have a cultural and ideological shift, I don't see independence actually working in Quebec the same way it would work in Saskatchewan or within Alberta.
And the north and east of BC.
Yeah, and the same the analysis I give of BC, I would love to see BC have its own independence movement, and I think it would be successful, but there would be some cancer within there that would really, I think, fundamentally hamstring BC at the founding of its constitution, because Vancouver and Victoria would have such a outsized say of what's going in that constitution.
And Tal says, howdy again, Nat and Guy, hello, and says freedom for Alberta, yes.
Read a couple more comments. I'm going to use the restroom real quick, and then we'll get it back into the
stories.
I'll
be back soon. You
Well,
don't have to go into it. We don't need that much info. Ruckin says, like the ostriches, makes no sense. Nothing makes sense in Canada, again, because in my opinion, it's a managed decline, and it's all very much on purpose and with a purpose that they don't want to reveal, of course. Earl, hello, says, last pop-up in Yuma, Arizona, Tuesday, March 24th, noon to 4, east side of Las Quintas RV Park. And yes, over in Yuma, Arizona, there has been this signing location for a while now. I remember we covered it and mentioned it quite a few times. So thank you for letting us know that the last pop-up will be Tuesday, March 24th, noon to 4, east side of the Las Quintas RV Park.
And what was that individual's name?
Earl, but I said
Earl. I was in the restroom. I thought you said girl. I was like, that's my dog's name.
That's our dog's name because he's guy, she's girl. It's cute. I came up with it. Daryl Robinson also says, Alberta will have ASPS, Alberta Sheriff Police Services, and any RCMP working Alberta will be asked to join with no reduction in rank or salary.
Fantastic plan. I'm glad to hear they're already kind of brainstorming what they actually do there.
And because, as well as Primora says, lost all respect for the RCMP after the events at the convoy. I mean, they trampled over a lady in a walker. What more do you need to know?
I used to teach
with a horse.
I used to teach jiu-jitsu in Vancouver at an MMA gym. So we had a lot of police officers come in there and a lot of RCMP. And you see an ideological shift within RCMP in their recruiting. They put them through lie detectors. They ask them a lot of ideological questions so they can make sure they're aligned in a very specific way. And you've seen that change happen over time, which was a damn shame.
Mm-hmm. But explains a lot as well. Albertan says police should be hired based on meritocracy. DEI is racist and lowers the bar.
And absolutely,
that's what they're doing.
Well, absolutely. But even after talking to a lot of RCMP, and that because I was training them, they were fairly honest on the recruiting process and what happens when you get in there, what kind of questions they ask. It should be illegal to ask a lot of these questions and figure out where, if you're liberally ideologically aligned, so then you can get passed through to the next hiring process. And if you're a conservative, they just don't want you. Now, there's still a lot of conservatives in there because they got into the force before a lot of these policies were put in place. But they have to keep their mouth shut about it unless they want to lose their jobs.
So remember the great leap forward. Primoris 007 says sheriff chiefs should be elected by counties like the states. Like in the states, then it's ensured they work for the people. Not always, but more so.
I do appreciate that, but there's also a little bit of a hole in there, meaning somebody can be elected as a sheriff without any police or military experience. Now, hopefully voters would be smart enough not to vote for somebody like that in, but if you get somebody voting in as the sheriff and they're a far left ideologue because they have enough money behind their campaign, that completely changes the policing within a community. Mm-hmm. So just thinking about some of the pitfalls that can happen if you do have elections for sheriffs is important.
And competing interests as well, and people that they can get to help vote for them. Yeah. Which again, here in Mexico, if you didn't know, we vote for judges now, which is insane.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And the Supreme Court, we vote for the Supreme Court too, which are all, of course, part of the Morena party.
I don't know why you point at me with that.
Because you're wearing the Morena tie now.
Wow, Scheinbaum must give me citizenship soon, I guess.
Daryl Robinson says NDP want Rocky Pincholi to replace Nineshi.
Yeah.
And also says Alberta exports 1.5 billion barrels of oil per year to the U.S. Do you think they know who Nineshi is or who Smith is?
Well, I'm going to say
Or do
this.
they care?
The amount of natural resource development within Alberta is an absolute speck of what it could be if they get their independence. I mean, that economy is going to blow up through the roof. Not just oil, your mining resources within there is going to be huge. And at that point, you can start building refineries so you don't have to send your mining materials and your oil materials down to the States to be refined there, so they can be sent back up, and then you have to pay an inflated price. But refine everything within Alberta, that's just more money in your pocket. And then once you have the refined actual metals and oils, well, then you should build manufacturing as well. I mean, everything would be enclosed. It would be an absolute powerhouse of manufacturing from start to finish, from mine to finished product.
Quebecer in Alberta says Edmonton is full of NDPers as well. And again, when did they get there is my only question.
Well, and that's the thing. Carney knows, and the federal government knows, if they can capture Calgary and Edmonton, they basically have Alberta. And that's why if they're going to implant immigrants, they can implant them within Calgary, within Edmonton. People won't notice as much.
And Troglodyte, hello, says, that's the name. I'm not calling someone Troglodyte. If you are the chief or their family, you are SOL on a reserve.
Exactly.
And that's been like a well-known secret for the longest time. But since they started with the whole push for land acknowledgements, etc., that got kind of left behind. Because when I got to Canada, that was a conversation that was ongoing about the corruption within the reserves and within the chiefs. And then that got completely shut out by the land acknowledgements and the First Nations derangement syndrome.
Well, as Alberta independence comes up, this first kind of derailment that the First Nations is coming at the independence movement with is coming from the elites. But there's going to be a huge payout, and it's going to be made very clear to the elites. Make sure this gets down to the tribe and make sure they know the messaging. So, and that's when you're going to see the national framework kind of come out. Let's go back into the headline stories, though.
Okay, let me go back to that one. And we'll read the rest periodically as we go. But from Berta Proud Dad says, quote, Emergencies Act ruled unconstitutional, now heading straight to the Supreme Court of Canada. This isn't just politics, it's about our rights, reigning in government power, and the future of free speech for every Canadian.
Yeah, a lot of people thought Carney wasn't going to actually challenge it and was going to let it go. Not the case. He probably wants to use the Emergencies Act again, and he doesn't. He wants to make sure that it's not tarnished. So they haven't used it the last time, and they haven't overreached. They want to make sure that's not on the record. Also, Carney's the one that recommended a lot of these things under the Justin Trudeau administration.
He was a puppet master behind in the shadows. He just stepped forward and started ruling himself because nobody else was capable of continuing his plan, apparently.
What if I told you the government broke the Constitution and now they're fighting to justify it? Let's rewind. January 2022, Canadians protest in Ottawa, the Freedom Convoy. Thousands show up, demanding an end to mandates. February 14, 2022, the Emergencies Act is invoked, otherwise known as the War Measures Act.
The federal government has invoked the Emergencies Act.
Bank accounts frozen, people detained, peaceful protesters treated like criminals. Fast forward to 2024, a federal court rules it was unconstitutional, not justified, not necessary, not legal. And now the federal government is taking it to the Supreme Court of Canada because they refuse to admit they went too far. At the same time, look what's happening. Bill C-9, Bill C-11, Bill C-18, Bill C-63. More control over what you see, what you say, and what you share. Men and women fought and died for freedom in this country, not for government overreach, not for censorship. And in just over a decade, we're watching those freedoms get chipped away piece by piece. If that doesn't concern you, it should, because once your rights are gone, getting them back isn't guaranteed.
Okay, yeah, and this is very important to really think about here as far as Alberta independence strategy. They want to make sure they have a clean record when it comes to invoking the Emergencies Act. So they're going to need the Supreme Court to kind of overturn this. This is Mark Carney's last opportunity to kind of clean up the record, because if the Alberta independence movement goes too far, I'm sure one of his strategies is going to be to invoke the Emergencies Act and say there's foreign interference from the United States coming into Alberta to try to separate it from us.
And this one we've been saying for about, what, 8-9 months now?
We've been saying about this a lot, but seeing Mark Carney actually try to challenge this when a lot of people didn't think he was going to challenge it and it was just going to disappear. There's a reason he's willing to keep this in the spotlight. It's because he's going to want to use that tool. And where is he going to want to use the tool? The only place I see it is Alberta independence in case it goes too far.
In case it actually works. I mean, they'll do anything, as we continue to say, anything to try and stop it, because Alberta is the most important province within Canada, and without it, Canada flounders.
Well, and you have to remember, Mark Carney just went to have his meeting with King Charles, and one of the big things on that docket was Alberta independence. King Charles said he wanted to know more about it. I'm sure they game planned it, and as soon as he comes back, oh, look what he's doing. He's actually going to challenge this in the Supreme Court now.
But now we have this from Marty saying, quote, Marty up north saying, quote, 10 massive Canadian federal projects, 2010 to 2025, that delivered almost zero benefits or were never built.
And I wish Marty would have put this into a video, but we'll kind of recap a lot of it. But the government keeps taking credit for this, but there's not a lot coming out of this stuff.
Forgot about some of these. Number one, Phoenix Pay System, $5 billion wasted, still broken payroll for 290,000 federal employees. The ArriveCan app, for which I got a $7,000 fine. 60 million plus for a Panini app, now obsolete. 3, high frequency rail. Decades of studies, 60 to 90 billion plus estimates, zero track laid.
Well, and this is important because they're still trying to build I don't know if it's the same high-speed rail or another one in Quebec right now. And if you look what happened in California, I mean, that ended up being the biggest scam for the California government. They laundered so much money through that program, and they still haven't got it done. It went over $100 billion, I think, over.
Radarsat Constellation, 1 billion plus satellites with years of delays and overruns. CH-148 Cyclone helicopters, 20 plus years late, billions extra, limited opportunities.
Well, and we're going to get into another government program, which is the most ridiculous I ever heard of in just a little bit. There's a story coming about Canada's new space program.
Assault style gun buyback, 100 million plus spent. Pilot just got 25 guns. Canada's infrastructure bank flops. Mapleton Lake Erie connector, billions committed, projects cancelled, sunk costs. Fixed wing SAR aircraft, repeated delays, still no full replacement. NEOS satellite, years late, over budget, limited value.
Okay, and you can leave it there.
Wait,
And
I'm almost done.
Okay, but that NEO satellite is very important. I'm going to bring that up when the space story comes up in just a moment.
Then the Canada Space Agency long-term satellite space strategy, repeated failed plans, capability gaps, tens of billions down the drain, classic Ottawa waste. And there's about 20 more wasted projects that could be mentioned.
Well, and you need to make sure this does not happen in
Canada bill.
You need to make sure this does not happen in Alberta. You need to make sure there's massive transparency when it comes to these things, and people are staying on top of it and on budget. So,
and also, right there, you mentioned Stellantis, the Stellantis thing, their Air Canada buyout, et cetera, et cetera. It just compiles. And that is how socialist governments work, because eventually they do run out of money, even though they promised a bunch of things, and they just have to continue to tax their citizens, who end up getting poorer and poorer, and whose wages don't go up.
Yeah, I mean, for every successful project you make within Alberta, you build a relationship with private industry, and then you build and you build and you build, and you need to make sure one industry supports the other industry, meaning fully develop the oil industry, because right now it's been held back for so long. Fully develop the mining industry, bring the refinement plants into Alberta as well, and put them very remotely, and make sure you bring manufacturing on the back of those things, so the kind of smelting you're doing, the kind of refinement you're doing, that you actually need those kind of metals for your manufacturing later on down the line. Think about it as a 50 or 100 year plan. How are you going to do this?
It's Speaking of businesses, Rise of Alberta asks, how many businesses are watching the Alberta independence movement and planning to relocate here when we leave? The reality is Canada is a system that punishes success, while an independent Alberta would become the best place on the continent to build, invest, and win. And we, for example, continuously see, for some reason, I still see updates about what's going on with the BC British Columbia Business Board or Board of Business, and they continuously complain about not being listened to and not having any opportunities within that province. So at least some of those businesses, I'm sure, would try to move.
Yeah, so this is one of the big talking points when you talk to your family or friends, or one of the big counterpoints that kind of come up is business is going to leave Alberta. And they say this because when Quebec went through its separatist movement and went to that vote, business had never recovered. Everything moved to Ottawa. It's a completely different situation. Quebec never really had the natural resource sector or the same industry that Alberta does have here. Alberta's not going to have the problem with business leaving. It's going to have a problem with business coming to Alberta from the rest of Canada. Once it gets its independence, right now, more Canadian businesses are opened up by Canadian citizens into the United States than in Canada. A lot of those businesses would rather stay within Alberta or move to Alberta than the United States if the tax incentives are set up right. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have businesses coming from the rest of Canada. You may even have a lot of U.S. businesses want to relocate to Alberta if you can set up good tax incentives. And because you're founding a nation, setting up good tax incentives is going to be well in your benefit. Mm-hmm. Take a look at Ireland. Very corrupt country. I don't like the government, but the way they set up a lot of their tax incentives, they're the most profitable in the G20.
Yeah, and if you realize, a lot of random businesses are in Ireland and have headquarters there as well.
And a lot of it has to do with banking. I do understand that, but a lot of it has to do with not taxing businesses as well.
Speaking of, and just continuing on this thought from Rise of Alberta.
And 1 second, after this article, we're going to go back to comments. So if you have any, leave them now. And let's hear what Keith Wilson has to say about this exact same subject.
From Rise of Alberta, quote, they say investment will leave Alberta under independence because some businesses left Quebec in the 90s. Wrong comparison. Alberta is already one of the most attractive places in Canada to do business, and independence would just make it more competitive.
Well, and another thing, once you unleash the natural resource sector, if you can build in refinement and then manufacturing, a lot of people are going to want to move there, especially if you set up your manufacturing and your refinement in a very specific way so you can attract certain sectors.
Mm-hmm. They say, well, in Quebec, businesses started to leave. Yeah, because Quebec really didn't have anything to offer back in the 90s when it was looking at doing its independence. If I had a business there, I would have left too. The problem Alberta's going to have with independence is all the businesses that are going to want to come here because there's so much economic activity, because we have resources, because we want to develop them, whether it's our forestry, particularly our oil and gas, our petrochemical, all our derivative industries, our high-tech industries, our aviation hubs for servicing aviation and other things, our distribution systems. Alberta is a hub of economic activity because we have an entrepreneurial spirit. We have less red tape than other jurisdictions. We have lower taxes. So we're already attracting businesses more than any other province in Canada is. Check the math. And that's only going to increase once other businesses see the opportunities and the greater profitability they'll have by being able to relocate their businesses to Alberta as opposed to keeping them in these leftist, bureaucratic, tax-heavy, restrictive provinces that exist throughout Canada, and particularly central Canada.
Yeah, and one of the big industries I would like to see kind of matured in Alberta is home building and home building related industries, because you're going to need such an influx of people that are conservatives coming from the rest of Canada. If you build up real home building and you build up the lumber industry, the steel industry, specifically the finished steel you're going to need for homes and things like this. This puts you in direct competition with Brookfield Asset Management and the rest of Canada. They're trying to make a new economy based upon rental homes. They want to build massive amounts of rental homes. You will own nothing and you will be happy. But if you're building homes in Alberta better and cheaper than Brookfield is trying to build in their manufacturing facility inside a warehouse, which you're going to build substandard homes for cold weather conditions, I mean, you're going to be able to take a lot of that business, or at least make Brookfield Asset Management and the rest of Canada look like a bunch of fools for trying to build basically mobile homes or boxes, trying to put people in boxes and have them eat bugs.
Literally put people in boxes. But now we will continue to read your comments. I'll try to get to as many as I can in this segment. Ruckin says, Pinder truck driver blew a flip-flop. Glenn Gunn says, sheriffs are rent-a-cops that can't become a cop.
Well, I don't know about that. It's going to depend on really how you organize your sheriff's service and everything else. And I would rather have Alberta train their rent-a-cops to such a high standard. They're better trained than the RCMP, and they don't have that ideological capture.
Sorry, I was trying to see if I missed one, but no. And Canadian Spider-Man, hello, says, good evening and hello, and also says, the troglodyte, same as Bangkok, indeed. And now they're all saying hi to each other. Troglodyte says, Quebec independence is just a negotiating ploy. Alberta independence is real. Was just a,
repeat that?
The Quebec independence movement was just and is a negotiating ploy, but Alberta independence is real. And that is why you shouldn't really care about everything that they talk about with economics and how the federal government can save Alberta through economics, just economics.
Quebec independence has not only been a ploy, it's been a ploy a political system has been set up around. So it's a continuous ploy that happens decade after decade after decade, creating a huge welfare program for the Quebec government and a corruption dump so politicians can line their pockets. Alberta independence is focused on more than just economics. So when they come with those big contracts and say, we're solving all your problems and all your discontent in Alberta by giving you natural resource contracts, you say, no. It was never about that. And the direction you're taking Canada is not the direction we're going. We're taking this to the finish line. We're going to take it to the mat no matter what it takes.
Yeah, Quebec movement is a gimme movement.
Oh, yeah.
Basically. Albertan says Northeast BC doesn't have a pathway towards independence, unfortunately.
Yeah, a lot of
especially
BC.
with Vancouver and Victoria there.
Yeah, and not even that. I mean, the federal government is starting to put more and more roadblocks in BC, and because they have a cooperative government in David Eby there and the NDP, they're able to work collaboratively to put all kinds of legislation, cede a lot of land to First Nations as well, which puts more and more roadblocks in. What you're going to want to make sure that or hopefully what they don't do is the northern port on the BC coast. You don't want them to cede that land because Alberta's hopefully going to be able to make a deal for roads and pipelines going directly out there.
Mm-hmm. And Troglodyte says we have the same problem as the US and BC. Urban versus rural are polar opposites and literally polar opposites.
Yeah, but you can change that in Alberta if you become independent.
In BC.
Oh, sorry. Well, yeah, within BC as well, but Alberta as well, because it's becoming an issue, especially in Calgary, but Edmonton too. If you do get independence, the mainstream media, you can pull the plug on that thing. BC is not going to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. And Canadian Spider-Man says, hang on, don't forget that there was an older guy right across from the woman who also got trampled. The poor guy got hit hard, but didn't go to the media. He probably went home and had a beer. and the older lady, again, was with a walker. But yeah, that horse trampled a bunch of different people. And also a bunch of other people got literally assaulted by police on camera and then try to deny it and say, no, that didn't happen. We didn't do anything to you.
Well, this is a very good opportunity if
I've had to run one of them.
If there are other content creators from Alberta or the Alberta independence movement to start really profiling on the show what happened during the truckers convoy again, what happened with the government overreach, profiling a lot of that stuff because that stuff's coming into the Supreme Court again, and it reminds Albertans of what happened then. So if the government decides to overreach for the Alberta independence movement, it's fresh in everybody's mind of what happened during the truckers convoy, because a lot of moderates have short-term memory, like
on purpose.
Yeah.
Sean says BC has a road naming problem, which we don't have yet in the USA.
Roads, streets, bridges, you name it. They're naming it things people can't even say, and they're putting letters that aren't even on the keyboard, so people can't get mail or bills to their house. So they're going into debt.
It's insane. Sean says, I wonder how Justin Trudeau feels about his father's home country falling apart. He doesn't care now. He's having babies with Katy Perry.
Well, he absolutely...
He destroyed it. He achieved his purpose.
Well, he absolutely loved it. This was actually Pierre Trudeau's wet dream of what's happening to Canada. They're going towards socialism and communism, but they have to degrade the population to such an extreme and propagandize them. A lot of people don't know, but Pierre Trudeau was one of the founding members of the Club of Rome. This is one of the big original globalist organizations, and Canada was well on the path under him, and then it continued under Justin Trudeau. You had a little reprieve with the conservative government, so people weren't quite aware of what's actually going on now. But you're having Mark Carney, which is really a globalist architect that has always worked behind the scenes.
Dara Robinson says, Emergency Act is why Alberta needs their own sheriffs.
Yeah,
and hopefully properly trained.
And that's why if you have sheriffs, you do the hiring process, and you can make sure that you're not going to implement federal government overreach.
Canadian Spider-Man says, do we get our money back from his bank account if and when they lose in the Supreme Court? Taxpayers shouldn't be on the hook for this. No.
No, and it's only going to get worse as he gets a majority government. So,
who was it that Joe Rush had suggested, what would happen if people just stopped paying their, like if everybody stopped paying their taxes? And then he was very scared that they were going to come get him for saying that. But
well, if Alberta gets independence, maybe nobody's going to have to pay taxes. That's the thing. The problem with Mark Carney, and I mean, as much as I don't like a lot of the stuff Mark Carney's doing,
all the stuff.
But it helps in a big way.
Yeah.
Every time he realigns with China, every time he brings up his Trump derangement syndrome, every time he puts a new carbon tax or does this or does that. Marty up north was saying, we see these rushes of people, and I ask him, what did Carney do now? And there's always something.
Yeah, and that's the thing. He's helping more than he, I think, wants to.
Yeah, but at a certain point, if they do want to take Canada into a real socialist, communist framework, maybe they want Alberta gone if they can't control it, because then there's nothing stopping them.
Yeah. Sean says, I have a Newfie friend, and he is kind of full of himself, so pretty sure he would disagree, saying Alberta is the most important province. And
well, what is that we profiled yesterday? Was that Newfoundland or...
Yeah, Newfoundland.
Yeah, that was Newfoundland yesterday. Yeah, Newfoundland really got a raw deal at the founding of the country. We played a video about that yesterday. They were forced into it.
Canadian Spider-Man says, it's Marty up north rocks.
Yeah, absolutely. And we profile them all the time.
And then they're talking about the streets and how stupid it is to virtue signal when you can't even write it. On 5B says, I'm planning to have my business move to Alberta by fall 2026.
Fantastic.
Another example.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back into the news here.
Yes.
And Alberta independence.
From Marty up north, and glad you mentioned him, says apparently X is rolling out a dislike button. I wish Elon would focus his attention on the bots.
Yeah, and this is gonna be absolutely fantastic. And I hope they keep the thumbs down button open so you can actually see it.
Visible.
Because YouTube, when they kept the thumbs down button on there, you can't see actually how many thumbs down you actually have. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be huge, especially for like when you're trying to counteract mainstream media and other narratives when it comes to Alberta independence.
But the bots, I do agree there with Marty up north. The bots might be a little bit more important than a dislike button.
Yeah, but you can usually tell the bots, because let's just say
some people can't.
Well, let's just say you post something about Alberta independence and you get overwhelmed with the dislikes, but there's no comments there. That's a good indication it's all bots. And people are starting to realize when bots are flooding things, and then you can always read the comments.
Hopefully.
Well, and that's why a lot of newer channels, they buy viewers, things like that. But then they say they have 10,000 views, but they have like 100 comments. Mm-hmm. So...
From Real Talk with Ray Jesperson says, quote, Brett Wilson says he'll absolutely vote to keep Alberta in Canada. Let's see what he says.
Will you be voting for Alberta to stay in Canada on October 19th?
Oh, pause it. Absolutely. And yeah, this is a little bit of different of opinion, and we don't get angry with people like this. He's still open-minded enough to Alberta independence, but he's a bit of more of a nationalist. But these are the kind of people that can be swayed over time.
Will you be voting for Alberta to stay in Canada on October 19th?
Absolutely. I happen to be a fan of the noise of Alberta separation, but I'm not there. I've stood in front of audiences and asked the question, do you want a moat or do you want a wall? Do you want a chain link fence? How are we going to separate? And people acknowledge we're not going to physically separate. We're going to separate with paperwork. And the paperwork we want is effectively the same as what a country called Quebec has. Imagine if Manitoba, Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC, and don't forget the Yukon, I'm heavily invested in the Yukon, and the Northwest Territories were to work collaboratively.
Pause it.
I believe.
This is a wet dream that can't happen. What if this and this and this and this happened? What if this happened? Alberta independence, there's a simple path forward to get that and fix all the problems. And once you put that framework out there, Saskatchewan can follow after you. This Alberta independence is actually how you get the change, not just for Alberta, but for a lot of these other provinces he wants to keep in Canada and have cooperation so we can all send our money back to Daddy Carney.
And it's not the same as Quebec. We just went through this.
We could be a better country. And I always joke about the fact that there's a group of provinces on the East Coast that work together. And they're called something, Atlantic Canada. Well, why don't we work collaboratively and stop worrying about letting Ontario and Quebec dictate our outcomes? I'm not stopping any of my investments in Alberta. In fact, I'll be really blunt. I'm having trouble investing in BC because of the confusion over their land ownership with UNDRIP and First Nations. Just being openly candid about it. Nobody wants to invest heavily in BC.
And somebody like this can be swayed. Because if I'm talking to him, I say, okay, you want all these provinces to work in cooperation. Do you think the federal government's actually going to allow this to happen? What's the path to making that happen? Why hasn't it happened yet? Start asking questions on that and then say, well, Alberta independence makes all those things happen almost overnight, and it gives a path to Saskatchewan and these other provinces. And then you can have cooperation within those provinces without the federal overreach or the remittances coming out.
The investing in Alberta hasn't relaxed at all. I mean, just the noise about separation is my personal belief that it's going to be a small percentage of the overall population. But what's important to me, and again, I keep using the word collaboration, if we could work together, we'd be a better region and therefore a better country.
Yeah, and I think...
But nobody wants to work together either.
Well, I also think a lot of people like that think like that are somewhat sympathetic to Alberta independence and the problems that are happening there. On the day that you're going to go out to vote, a lot of those kind of people are going to stay home. And that's why the people that are so committed to Alberta independence, even if it's 30%, now I already think it's over 50%, but even at 30%, they're such a motivated bloc to come out, they should be able to overwhelm the voting booth. So... What do you got for me next?
Jeff Everly, quote, saying it was a pleasure speaking with Jesse Thomas from CTV today. I was pleasantly surprised for the second time today by how fair the coverage of the hearing on the charter applications to the 2025 Nova Scotia woods ban. So again, this was that veteran that went into the woods and got a $28,000 fine because you're not supposed to go into the woods in Nova Scotia. Perhaps the pendulum is starting to swing back. No, I wouldn't say that. But he says, note that this hearing is just for the charter applications to the woods ban. I won't be in court to contest the ticket itself until July.
Oh, hold on.
What?
Okay. Good. This was just the mainstream media covering him, so I posted this. Day 2 of the trial has now started. This morning, all he said was day 2 started. I meant to get the update, so I'm trying to look it up now. Okay, let's play the video, though.
Cape Breton resident Jeff Everly arrived at Nova Scotia Supreme Court ready to make his challenge that the province went too far on August 5th when they banned the public from entering the woods. The public was threatened with fines of more than $25,000 and possible jail time for anyone who defied the order.
We live under rule of law, so that means the government has to follow the law too. And in this case, it is my opinion that they breached our charter rights.
At the time, the fire risk was high to extreme across the province, but Everly, who lives in Sydney and says he suffers from PTSD following several combat tours with the armed forces, hikes through the woods daily to help manage his symptoms.
It was very anxiety-promoting, I'll say.
Everly purposely defied the woods ban and walked into the woods near a DNR office. He notified officials of his plan and was fined more than $28,000. He's supported by the Canadian Constitution Foundation in this court fight, which they hope the judge rules in their favor.
The proclamation will be determined to be too vague, overbroad, invalid, and that in the future the government will more carefully consider people's basic rights before issuing such proclamations.
Peter McIsaac worked nearly 30 years in the woods with the Department of Natural Resources and supports Everly, calling the blanket ban a knee-jerk reaction not based on science.
There's no scientific data or no recorded data. Somebody walking in the woods or through the act of fishing has set a fire in the province of Nova Scotia.
No witnesses were called today. Only legal arguments were made. The province's legal team is expected to make their case tomorrow. Jesse Thomas, CTV News.
Okay, and this is part of the climate emergency lockdowns that they really wanted to kind of bring into effect, and that's why this case is important, even though they're kind of laying off on that narrative because Trump has pushed back so hard on it. They really wanted to take this to an extreme measure. That's why this case is important. That's why I'm going to follow it right through to the end. The next post you can bring up because it's related to it. And this was all that came out today. I tried to just check right now where the video was playing. He has given no further updates, but day 2 has happened. And I'm sure by Friday's show, we should have an update on what's kind of happened there. But this is a very, very important case. This is the next level of government overreach they wanted to go to.
And for years now, we've also been talking about the mismanagement of forests within Canada, and then the obvious consequence that they burn up because they haven't been doing controlled burns and managing the brush properly. They've just let it be and then let it burn so they can say, oh, they can point and say, look, it's burning, it's climate change. It's because it's been mismanaged, and the ancestral way that people used to manage forests is not used anymore.
Well, by ancestral way, what you mean is control burning and forest management and cleanup, and none of that is happening. And in blue states where they want to make this climate narrative like California, they enact the exact same policies. No controlled burning, no forest management. So when there's one spark that goes off, the whole thing goes up. And then they can build their narrative off of that. Then they can put massive amounts of money towards it. And then politicians can line their pockets, and their NGOs, they can funnel money that way as well for their next elections.
Exactly. From Marty up north as well, it says, quote, Alberta does more trade with the USA than with the rest of Canada. Alberta's merchandise exports to the United States reached about 162 billion Canadian dollars, accounting for 88% of the province's total international exports. This dwarfs its interprovincial exports, goods and services to the rest of Canada, which totaled just 70.6 billion Canadian dollars in 2024. It's a clear sign of how integrated Alberta's economy, especially energy, is with the US. The idea that a landlocked, independent Alberta would suffer economically is ridiculous. P.S. There are 14 to 16 landlocked countries in Europe, depending on how you define Europe and whether you include certain microstates or disputed territories.
Yeah, and this is a good example, and leave it up there for a minute, of why Alberta needs the rest of Canada for absolutely nothing. Now, once you get your independence, you're going to want to make good trade relations with, obviously, BC, because it gives you an alternative source to make it to the coast. But you can really be the one applying pressure to BC, especially if you get a good trade, which you already have is good trade relations with the U.S.
But also, what happened to that? I don't know if it's international law, which it doesn't really matter that much at this point, but what happened to that? It's not a theory, but rule, I guess, that landlocked countries do need to have access to
You're supposed to.
the ocean. Okay.
Yeah, you're supposed to, but I don't think nobody's going to recognize that at this point, especially with the deterioration of international law. It was never a thing. Whoever has hard power is going to make whoever they're negotiating with respect international law. So basically, Alberta's strategy would be to put a huge tariff on BC, implement hard power, and then tell them privately behind the scenes, just say you're going to respect international law and allow us access to the coast, so it doesn't look like you bent the knee to us, and then we'll take down the tariffs. That's the strategy for BC, and you're going to have to play hardball with them. You're going to have to play like you're Trump, basically.
From Juno, thank you for clarifying that. From Juno News, Saskatchewan Finance Minister Jim Ryder introduced the budget 2026 by touting closer ties with Prime Minister Mark Carney than with his predecessor. He cited joint trade missions to China, where canola tariffs were slashed, and India, where a $2.6 billion uranium deal through 2035 was signed.
This is absolutely ridiculous, and this is a fantastic thing that has happened, and I hope a lot more independent media picks up on this. The Saskatchewan independence movement is really starting to get legs under it, and when they take actions like this, it really helps more people kind of flood to the independence movement within Saskatchewan. Within Alberta, you have a lot of politicians that kind of try to appease people within Alberta, and then you have Mark Carney pushing people to Alberta independence. Here you have Mark Carney and the people that are running Saskatchewan. Really, it's a double negative for people that want to keep Saskatchewan part of Canada.
Our government is focused on strengthening our economy through diversifying our trade markets. This is accomplished by expanding our trade offices, building relationships around the world, and by focusing on results rather than politics. While our relationship with the U.S. has become more challenging of late, we have reduced our trade dependence on the U.S., and we've also been able to work more closely with the new Prime Minister than with his predecessor. In just the past few weeks, our Premier joined Prime Minister Carney on trade missions to China and India. In China, an agreement was signed that reduced Chinese tariffs on canola and other Canadian agricultural products.
Let's remember when Scott Moe did go to China with Mark Carney, and when Mark Carney said the New World Order, you could just see in his face that he was as concerned, I think, as most of us.
But he was at that table and he made that trip with Mark Carney. He just knew he was on camera, and the fact that he said New World Order, he's like, oh shit, my voters are not going to like this. But that being said, more people in Saskatchewan just supporting this globalist network of BS.
India, the Premier joined the Prime Minister as Cameco signed a $2.6 billion deal to supply uranium through 2035, which means reliable electricity for India and good jobs.
Scott Moe's sitting right there, and you can see him kind of go like, oh God, why is he bringing this up?
For northern Saskatchewan and more revenue for the province. We will continue working to expand our export markets around the world because unlike some in the Assembly who have criticized our trade efforts and even campaigned on closing Saskatchewan's trade offices, our government did not suddenly discover the importance of growing and diversifying trade following the election of Donald Trump. These important trade deals are the result of years of hard work and relationship building and being in foreign markets to tell Saskatchewan's story to the world because we have a great story to tell. Saskatchewan has what the world needs, and our government is making sure the world knows it.
God, you sound just like Mark Carney, and people in the Alberta independence movement need to really play that clip as well, because that's what Alberta is going to become. Absolutely ridiculous the way they're taking Saskatchewan, and I think they're thinking, well, Mark Carney's going to get a majority government. If we want things to improve, we need to start cooperating and brown-nosing him. That is only going to help Saskatchewan independence movement. So people within the Saskatchewan independence movement really need to start enacting some things and following Alberta's lead. Now's the time before Mark Carney gets a majority government, and maybe Alberta's able to squeak out of the country, and then the majority government of Mark Carney is going to want to slam the door on any other province following.
Now we'll go to comments.
Okay, go to comments. Go to your camera.
Okay. Where am I? There we go. From Albertan says, quote, Quebec has huge corporate taxes and more red tape than any other province. Forcing everything to be in French was the main reason for the exodus of Quebec headquarters to Toronto. That and the continued insanity also by not wanting to, as the guy always says, use their own resources as well. Albertan also says, Alberta is pro-business, applies to apples to oranges versus Quebec's case. Exactly, and the fact that so many people, and like that guy we just saw, that businessman, energy director, investor, whatever his title was trying to say, oh, this is going to be exactly like Quebec. No, it's not. And that's why the debate and education about why it's different and where those differences lie is so important as well. Troglodyte says, I'm a BC ocean boy, but had family in Alberta. Would be a tough decision, but I want out of the commie hell in BC.
Yeah. And
run, don't walk.
Well, I've been to Alberta and I've lived in BC. BC has to be one of the most beautiful places within Canada. The problem is the ideology there. It just makes it absolutely unlivable.
Sean says...
Oh, and I will say one thing. If anybody's not subscribed, please do so. We're 2 away from our daily goal, which was 1975, which she said we weren't going to get to. So make me right on this one. But we are approaching 2,000 subscribers.
Yes, and thank you so much to everybody that has subscribed. And Sean says to Troglodyte, you know what they say, a broken clock is right twice a day, except in Newfoundland because of the half-hour time zone difference. Jared Robinson says, an independent Alberta can potentially become an energy superpower for real. And I would say not just potentially.
Not just an energy superpower, and we need to start looking past this. You can become a mineral superpower, a refining superpower, an export superpower, a manufacturing superpower. You have everything you need need there. There's major forests there as well for lumber, developing industries that maybe not be profitable in the short term, but benefit you in the long term. This would be the lumber industry, stuff like this. Things that are absolutely necessary. And the farming window is very narrow in Alberta, but you want to really develop the farming industry as much as possible because it makes self-reliance and self-independence. One country I would kind of point at, which a lot of people hate, is Russia. They created a moat economy. So even if everybody sanction them or cut them out of the world economy, they would still be able to survive. And you see that coming around now. Not to say it's the best country, but you want to build self-reliance and self-sufficiency, especially because potentially you could be landlocked if the United States gets the wrong president or ideology in there.
Dara Robinson says, the Alberta sheriffs are trained at Alberta Government Sheriff Academy in Edmonton. They are better trained than the RCMP, better self-defense and psychology.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But that's another thing with police. They make you go through the psychology programs within the university system, and they're completely ideologically captured courses.
And Sean says,
because I've seen some concern. I had some people that went through RCMP training, and then they were taking college courses, and they were fairly conservative, and then they started taking these. What was it called? Psychology courses. And you've seen this transition happen then.
Sometimes literal transition. Sean says, Nat, I was talking about Cuba. Oh, okay. Thank you, Sean.
Well, what did he say about Cuba?
Do you want me to go find the comment?
No. Just continue on.
And Troglodyte says, infidelity. Exactly. Trudeau.
Oh, okay.
Fidel Castro.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Daddy. Actual daddy.
Yeah.
And other daddy. Both daddies were really bad. Hold on. Let me see. Okay.
I was seeing a picture of...
Oh, here. Sean says, I bet the Castros end up in Canada. Family reunion.
Oh, yeah.
Especially now that baby Trudeau is having his own babies.
Yeah. Well, I seen a picture of Justin Trudeau and his dad at a baseball game back in the 70s or 80s. They were sitting in different rows. They did not look like father and son.
Joe Rush, hello, says, I just feel bad for ignorant people. Can't blame them for not knowing or being blind. We can only try to educate. You can blame them a little bit. But yes, and then educate them.
Well, no, this is a real opportunity because I think...
Because willful ignorance is different than ignorance, in my opinion.
This is a real opportunity, not just for Alberta, but once you get your independence, to lead by example. All those people that are liberal-minded, living in Calgary, a lot of them living in Edmonton as well, are going to see what happens. And then when they see the success, they're going to say, maybe liberal ideology wasn't the way to go. Maybe Canada was going off a cliff. And those people are going to be so important because they're going to have the ability to talk to everybody else in national Canada that's left once Alberta gets its independence. And people will listen to them because these are people that have woken up, that used to think just like them. And this is what's going to help Saskatchewan independence. And once you have Saskatchewan and Alberta independence, there's a lot of liberal-minded people in BC, but when you have other liberals that had already lived in Alberta and Saskatchewan kind of say, I've had my transition now because of the success, they're going to be able to talk to the people in BC, and that's the only way BC is going to be able to be saved, because BC is going to need a lot of saving once Alberta does leave.
And Alberta, exactly. We know we don't want what Quebec has. We want to be a sovereign and independent country completely separate from Ottawa.
Absolutely. And that's why you don't want the 51st state. I mean, I know there's a lot of people within Alberta that talk about 51st state. I lived half in Canada, half in the United States, even though I was born in Canada. And the United States can be very bipolar. In 2028, if Gavin Newsom takes over the United States, trust me, you do not want to be part of the United States.
No. And Daryl Robinson continues, sovereign nation has borders with border police. He's being ridiculous. Exactly. That guy, the energy investor or whatever he was called. Sean says, after Nova Scotia banned outdoor camping and hiking, not sure if you want to work with them. Joe Rush says, I like and have the utmost respect for the Canadian Constitution, for the Canadian Constitution Foundation and what they do that are helping heavily.
Yeah, we talked about We talked about them yesterday. I watch her a lot. The girl that runs the YouTube station. She brings up a lot of good constitutional issues and she goes in depth into the court cases. She's much like how Robert Barnes is in the United States, talking about constitutional issues on an in-depth basis with his Sunday show with Viva Fry. Keith Wilson is doing a big service about talking about a lot of different cases as well.
Robert Barnes has been missing a little bit lately, but Robert Barnes has been batting
he's fine.
wrong lately.
Sometimes you're going to get it right. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong. But I will also say the constitutional, name the organization again?
Canadian Constitution Federation.
They do help out a lot of people with their legal battles as well. And they take important constitutional cases that people normally wouldn't be able to afford lawyers with.
Yeah. Troglodyte says arsonists can now claim they are helping the environment. Exactly. And they almost have, because the arsonists in the federal government that continue to, and provincial governments that continue to not do anything about it, do claim that that's what they're doing by banning and doing stupid things like this.
Yeah.
Albertan says Section 36, Section 2, Equalization Scam of Canada's Constitution Act 1982 is one of the main reasons why I wholeheartedly support Alberta independence.
Yeah, and I used to say you can fix it. I don't believe that no more. You can fix it. Alberta independence is the way to fix it. But trying to fix it within the Canadian system is ridiculous. Like that guy was just saying a minute ago, oh, my dream is Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Western Canada, and the Yukon. We all work together. And it's just like, there's so many dominoes you have to get in a row, and then you're going to have the federal government putting so many roadblocks up and then putting more and more roadblocks up. Alberta independence is the clean split and the clean solution. Okay, let's leave the comments there and go back into some stories.
Let me know if it all just paused, because I think the website for YouTube crashed. But I got a thing that said it crashed. That's why I was trying to figure it out. And exactly, Albertan, he says Canada's constitution is against Alberta's best interests.
Oh, definitely. And it's going to continue to be.
Before you get into the next section, let me just finish, because there's just 2 more comments.
Wait, read the comments in case YouTube crashed.
Yes. Sean says, Carney saying New World Order was more comical than anything. Well, it was full-on mask off, don't care anymore. I'm just joining China and we're in the New World Order.
Yeah, it did a lot of help for the Alberta independence movement. That's been clipped more than any other thing. I mean, a lot of people talk about his Davos speech was fantastic if you talk to any liberal. Problem is that none of those liberals actually watched the speech. They just read about it being published by mainstream media, who's paid over $1.4 billion a year to recite the party line.
And Albertan says the preamble to Canada's Constitution of 1867 is insulting to say the least, ensuring the head of state will never be born here as a monarchy under the crown of the United Kingdom.
Yeah. And we talked about that before. King Charles does have a puppet string to power if he wants to implement that. I know I got a lot of pushback on that, and that's why I researched it in depth. He appoints the Governor General, was that it?
Yes.
The Governor General, who can dissolve Parliament, and he's got a series of other things he can implement through the Governor General as well.
And also ask yourself why all the Commonwealth nations are doing insane things all at the same time and trying to pass legislation and implement laws that are insane and completely against their own citizens.
Yeah, and when I say Charles does have power with inside of Canada, I'm not trying to derail the Alberta independence movement. I'm trying to prepare everybody for it and say why Donald Trump is such an important ally, because he's pushing back on a global level against a lot of the things King Charles is doing, not because he wants to help Alberta independence, but because he wants to help the United States.
And Sean, let's see if everybody else, all of the other Albertans here, can answer this question for you. He asks, would Alberta recognize Taiwan? Interesting question. And I have left, hold on, KP for you for far too long over on RU and BLE by themselves.
Well, absolutely they would recognize Taiwan, but I want to get into this for a minute because we didn't bring an article up. There was some of the high-ranking military brass in Canada gave an interview. It was really hard to clip the interview because it was long, and he was giving a lot of contradictory statements about why Canada is not going to help in Iran right now or in the Middle East. It's a hard no, but we're going to send more and more money to Ukraine. Ukraine's going to win the war. We just sent 400 more vehicles. Then, good on the journalist, he asked him a specific question. Well, if things don't turn around in Ukraine, how do you expect to win it or negotiate a truce? He goes, well, we need the U.S. to step up to the plate. Well, all of NATO, including Canada, refused to back Trump in Iran. And even though I disagree with the Iran war, if you're the U.S.'s ally, you're expected to actually back their play, especially if you want them to back your play in Russia, which Donald Trump has been backing that play, even though he says he doesn't want to be in that war. So maybe this one of the big things coming out of this Iran thing, and I only think it's going to go another 2.5 weeks. Trump does not want it to go to a congressional vote, and that's where it has to go after 4 weeks. One of the good things that might come out of it, if he pulls out of Iran, he's now going to say, well, the Russian war is now Canada's problem and Europe's problem. You didn't want to back us in the Middle East. I don't have to back you there. Maybe we should even pull out of NATO.
I mean, that would be
NATO is trying to push that Russian war into World War III. Donald Trump's kind of standing in their way. They want to wait him out the 3 years. Sorry I brought that up, but the general was absolutely crazy, especially because Canada doesn't have much of a military. So if the United States if the United States wants your help in Iran, you send a few troops, you're not really going to make a big difference, but it shows that you're aligned with the United States. And
Canada was already attacked.
And they're giving you free military protection for decades now. You have the largest unprotected border with Russia, and you've donated the most per capita, $13 billion to the Ukraine war. And you're bordering the country that's at war with Ukraine. It's not a good idea not to back the U.S., especially when they're the ones protecting you. Have no qualms about it. The Canadian military is not protecting Canada. It's the U.S. that's doing that because of its geographical location.
Mm-hmm. And now I go to KP for you on RUMBLE. We are also streaming on rumble.com. You can go there if your comment gets censored on YouTube or if you just prefer that platform. KP for you says, good day, and sorry for leaving you waiting for this long. Says, fun fact, women's eyes actually see more color spectrum than a man's. That's why Guy and I call it red, but Nat sees maroon. It is maroon.
I agree.
It's maroon.
Okay, let's go back to the headline stories here.
Okay, now we're moving on to...
Yeah, press the button.
Soon that won't be your anthem. Hopefully
and
very
now
soon.
we're going to go into Canada, and a lot of these stories are related to Alberta independence. So yeah, let's get into it.
Especially speaking of what you were just talking about from the Post Millennial says, quote, JD Vance says, Canada has taken advantage of the United States of America for far too long.
Yeah, and they're using Rubio on the international stage with Cuba, with Venezuela, and they're using JD Vance internally to go to Michigan, to go to other places, to address things with Canada.
This could also mean that once the chessboard moves for 2028, he did a lot of the internal things that he can mention during the campaign trail.
Next question. Hi, Remington Hernandez, News Channel 3 in Kalamazoo. The Gordie Howe Bridge is not too far from here. President Trump has made some comments about trade with Canada. For manufacturers here in Michigan, that bridge will be a lifeline to get products over the border. Do you think that the president has taken the right steps with Canada in regards to the bridge, and do you think that it should open on time?
Well, the president's attitude to Canada is they are an important ally. They're an important trading partner, especially for folks in this region of our country. But Canada has taken advantage of the United States of America for far too long. And they've taken advantage of the United States in a couple of different ways. Number one, they have allowed us to subsidize their entire military, their entire security. Canada pays virtually nothing, at least until a couple of years ago, for their own security, which means we had to foot the bill for that security. Is that fair to you and your kids that you have to pay for the military of a foreign country? No. So the President of the United States said to the Canadians, number one, you guys got to take your own security more seriously. You're always going to be an ally, but why don't you have a little bit more?
Yeah, and he's going to go to a lot of different talking points where Canada really did take advantage of the United States. A lot of Canadians don't know this because the mainstream media just won't touch it. Canada is the one being abused by Trump and the United States. For decades, Canada has taken advantage of the United States. Militarily is the least of it. It's actually the other talking points he's going to go into in a minute here.
And again, Canada has that very important northern territory border that they're not securing almost at all, but it is very important for the U.S. to make sure that that stays at least a little bit secure.
Now, I will say some independent media does touch on a lot of how Canada has been tariffing the United States for decades and taking advantage of them. Clyde Do Something is one of those. We we've profiled it quite a bit on here, but Canadian citizens are baffled when you say Canada is the one that's been tariffing the United States for decades. The United States is just doing the same treatment back now.
Or self-sufficiency. And I think that makes complete and total sense. The second thing the president said is, if we're going to be true friends, you have to treat our workers as fairly as we've treated Canadian workers for 40 years. Again, we have let so many people over the entire time that I've been alive take advantage of the United States of America. The president said, if you're going to apply a tariff to our goods, we're going to start applying a tariff to your goods too. It's basic fairness. And that's what we've done. And our hope with Canada, and I think we'll get there eventually, is we're going to get to a point where Canada treats our workers fairly, we treat their workers fairly, and they're going to be a true ally and a true friend, not somebody who's taken advantage of us, which is what they've done for most of my life. Thank you.
And the problem with that is it's a hard sell for the Canadians. They're going to have to really be financially broken before they actually wake up and realize a bad deal is better than no deal. It's kind of like Quebec. Quebec has been getting so many remittance payments for so many years, taking advantage of Western Canada for so long. If you do cut them off, they're going to say, we're separating, because they're going to be so angry, not realizing they probably can't economically stand on their own 2 feet anymore. Donald Trump's calling out Canada at this point, much like Western Canada is trying to call out Quebec.
Mm-hmm. And next, a story that is very interesting to me because it has to do with the population collapse. And I continuously talk about this, at least I used to a while ago, from Table Salt saying, quote, in Q4 2025, Canada's natural population increase, births minus deaths, so people within the country that are having babies, was negative 781 people. Canadians no longer having children because they can't afford to. Demographic collapse underway. And again, this doesn't take into account both people that leave but are already grown or born, at least, or people that come into the country that are already born. This only takes into account those that are born within Canada.
Yeah, and this doesn't mean flood the country with immigrants.
No.
Not at all. Just put a moratorium on immigration, get your replacement rate up so at least you're can replace the citizens you have, even if you're not growing it, and figure out how to arrange your economy around that. Once you can have a firm economy with the citizens you have, and then you can talk about, okay, we can allow a moderate amount or a small amount of immigration. It's not just about GDP and building a pyramid scheme that benefits the country, but not the citizens within the country. The economy should be kind of worked around the citizens' quality of life, and the country should be second.
But especially for Alberta, don't follow in Canada's footsteps with this as well. Build and start a nation where young people are encouraged to have families, have the opportunities to be able to have a family, to be able to have a stable income where they could actually look into buying a house, having a child, etc., etc. And given the wealth of natural resources that you're sitting on top of, it shouldn't be that difficult to do that, especially for the young people that do see the Alberta independence as a hope for being able to have an actual future instead of what they had in Canada.
So many businesses and jobs are going to be available if you live in Alberta once independence happens. People are going to be looking to migrate there. The thing is, you're going to be able to pick and choose. I said this earlier, pick and choose nations that are culturally similar to you from a moral values standpoint. Primarily, I would say Christian moral values is a good place to look for that. And then make sure they're not just coming there to work, send a bunch of money back home, and then leave. Look for people that are really trying to set up their family. So say somebody wants to immigrate there that's a male, preferably they have a family and they're going to bring their family with them. So.
Oh, and having a Christian moral foundation doesn't mean they have to be religious themselves, but basically, the West is built upon a Christian moral foundation. Even if you're not religious, a lot of the laws, a lot of the things that you follow naturally come from and have that background. So
you don't want to bring in a mass migrant population that's going to try to implement Sharia law or go around the laws of your governments because they follow God's laws, not Alberta's laws.
Mm-hmm. From Table Salt also saying, quote, guess what Canada is doing now to solve this free fall? They're raising the industrial carbon tax on April 1st and every year in April until 2030. Absolute death cult, I will say. And it says Canada stopped investing and America didn't, and these were the results. So industrial machinery investment since 1980, and we can see there the U.S. investment nearly doubled, while Canada tanked to less than 40%.
And these are the things, when you build your nation, I already said this multiple times on the show, but build your manufacturing base out, your refinement base out, make sure one industry helps the other industry, helps the other industry. You'll lose a lot of your investments in the beginning, but your long-term growth will trend upwards in a big way, and you'll be completely self-sufficient. Not globally sufficient, which a lot of Western cultures are set up right now. And with the global economy breaking down, you see a lot of these individual economies breaking down.
And it literally looks like managed decline. Like it is what they want to do, because it's the complete opposite that you would do if you actually wanted a country to prosper.
Well, and it's obvious. And that's one of the big problems Canada is going to have with Alberta when it does separate. It's going to take a lot of the conservative policies the Liberal government refused to implement. It's going to implement them. It's going to have major success. And then what's Canada going to say? Well, they have natural resources. Well, BC has natural resources as well.
Quebec too. I mean,
Saskatchewan does as well. Even Quebec has natural resources. What's the problem here? What was the difference? It was a difference of ideology and policies, and it's going to be a 1-to-1 comparison.
And priorities because of that ideology.
Yeah, and there was a lot of the U.S. government under Democratic rule does not like the Amish population, because it does the same thing that Alberta is going to do to Canada. It gives a baseline to a population within the United States, given everything else is equal. Well, they don't take medication. They work outside. Their lifestyle is different. And why are they living?
They're unplugged.
Why are they living so much longer? Why do they have lower depression rates? Why are all these things happening? They don't like that comparison when it comes to research studies to be able to be made. Alberta is going to provide the same thing to Canada.
I think this is what you were talking about earlier about space.
Yeah, this was shocking. We're going to get into this right now.
From 604 Raw, quote, Canada just signed a $200 million deal for a new spaceport in Nova Scotia. The 10-year agreement aims to give Canada its own launch site so Canada doesn't have to rely on SpaceX and other foreign rockets to get satellites into orbit. The deal will support building independent launch capability on Canadian soil for satellites and defense needs. It will still take years before it's fully running.
Absolutely ridiculous. $200 million. You cannot start any space program for $200 million at all. They've already invested hundreds of more millions of dollars in their satellite companies. And for the only way for their satellite companies to get their satellites into space was SpaceX, because it was not financially viable. On top of that, I looked into SpaceX today. This was the article that fascinated me the most. I looked into SpaceX today. How much does it cost to run SpaceX on a yearly basis? Yes, they bring income in now, but there's $8 to $10 billion yearly to run SpaceX, and the upfront cost for the initial years was 15 to 20 billion, and they weren't getting any money back. They had to lose money after money after money. They probably lost $100 billion to get that company up and running, and the Canadian government thinks they're going to do it for $200 million. Who are they joking? They're going to give this contract out. Nothing's going to get built. People's pockets are going to get lined. And then they're going to go to SpaceX, say, can we buy room on your spaceships, sir?
And this is partly because of TDS, but also to be able to say that they're doing something and that they're taking action.
This is freaking ridiculous.
As with every single other project that hasn't worked that we just went through.
Yeah. And again, SpaceX has
prioritized?
No.
Prepared? What are you trying to say?
When you have a
priority?
No.
Prioritize.
No, not prioritize. Priority.
What? This happens like once a day.
When you have technology that only your company has.
Proprietary.
There you go. Proprietary technology only to SpaceX so they can launch and land. SpaceX's costs are still extremely, extremely high in the billions of dollars. But the reason they're able to bring it down to the level they're able to bring it, which is $8 to $10 billion a year, is because they can reuse their rockets. A lot of other space agencies can't reuse rockets, and their costs are in the hundreds of billions. We're talking China, Russia. There's not a lot of other countries that are space-faring. Okay.
Speaking of other investment That was funny. Speaking of other investments, quote from Mark Nixon, Honda is canceling Prologue EV in the US after sales collapse. The $15 billion invested in Canada still moving forwards for now. How long before they decide to pull the plug in Canada as well?
Yeah, it's only a matter of time. A lot of these Japanese companies are now pulling out of Canada. They felt slighted when Canada refused to sell them any oil, and they were absolutely desperate. They came here begging. They already said they're shutting down the Toyota plant. I think it was 70 or 80% of cars manufactured in Canada are from Japanese companies. So all that's based out of Ottawa. Ottawa is going to take a big hit with all this. Investing in electric vehicles in a cold weather country, again, it's not going to work. They only have the plant set up to avoid tariffs to smuggle the cars into the US.
And again, EV sales are collapsing, and in the US especially.
But EV sales are collapsing, but at least in hot weather states, it's somewhat more viable. In cold weather conditions, when you have to put cold weather tires on the EV, it dramatically reduces the EV. Some EVs won't even run with cold weather tires.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen Teslas trying to go through the snow in Vancouver, which it doesn't even snow that much there? It's pretty funny.
Well, maybe the Cybertruck, but that was a big fail for the most part.
Yes, it was. Speaking of big fails and the climate scam as well, from a truck spot, plastic recycling is a scam, and this is in Vancouver, allegedly in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Well, no, this is in British Columbia, and I know people on the inside of this thing. One of my cousins went to school for, oh God, I forgot what it's called, but she went through all the recycling, what happens at each step, how do you do everything, and by the end of it, she was no longer for recycling because she learned all of this right here.
We're testing the Canadian recycling system, buying 9 tons of plastic, diverting it to a warehouse in BC, and installing satellite tracking devices. They specialize in covert tracking.
They connect with a GPS satellite every 2 to 3 minutes and then show you on a map within 10 meters where they are.
By getting 3 companies with ties to recycling
And
programs.
pause it for a minute. I don't want to get dinged because it's fairly well produced. That being said, they do have, I believe it's a college student, come along to show her exactly what's happening, and her jaw starts to drop. A lot of people that go into a lot of these green sectors learn a lot of this stuff, and they're completely disenfranchised once they learn it.
Haul it away. Merlin Plastics says it's committed to a more sustainable future. GFL, an environmental solutions leader. Waste Connections encourages recycling and reuse. Back in Vancouver, our trackers are on the move. Turns out it also stayed in BC, but not to be recycled.
So, what does it say up there?
Waste to energy facility.
Our plastic bale came in here, went in there, and they incinerated it.
Okay.
They burned it.
No. I didn't realize that plastic was getting burned.
GFL tells us there isn't demand for our kind of plastic, so burning it is the cost-effective solution.
And
Burning
pause it.
creates
Yeah, and this is just the first. There's a second way they get rid of this plastic, but none of it is in a good way.
This is what they do in Mexico on the streets.
toxic ash. Finally, there's the batch with Waste Connections. You see the trucks that are in there.
Yeah.
It's also still in BC.
Dump trucks.
And Natasha is in for a surprise.
I mean, you see,
Holy, yeah.
it's all just going in. I mean, this is a landfill.
Yeah.
It's just where you figured it would end up.
No, it's definitely not where I thought my recycling would end up.
Remember, Waste Connections encourages recycling and reuse, but as it turns out, not illegal. Recycling haulers in BC have no obligation to actually recycle the plastic. Mountains of our plastic burned overseas.
Now my son is getting always sick.
Tons of it dumped in a Canadian landfill.
Yeah, and the other big scandal within British Columbia is a lot of it is shipped over to Asian countries, and it's just dumped in these Asian countries because they didn't want to deal with it themselves. Now that a lot of these Asian countries are passing laws not to take American and Canadian plastics, and so they're having to put it in their own landfills and burn it themselves now.
If any of you have ever worked in an office or just lived around anywhere in Canada, you know how Karen-y some people can get about recycling because they trust the system and trust it will work. But
Well, I try to tell some liberal friends here in Mexico what's happening to their plastic. They look at me like I'm freaking crazy. And I'm like, if Canada's doing it, what the hell do you think was happening in Mexico? They're definitely doing not only the same, but probably doing it to a much worse extent.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, there's a city called Santa Fe not too far from us.
Yes.
Where the entire...
It's not a city, it's a part of town.
The entire thing is built on top of a landfill.
Yeah, and it smells like it too.
They actually have pipes coming out of it to release the gases. Oh, they actually have a energy manufacturing facility there. They can, a lot of the gases they can turn into energy, which is quite funny.
From Ryan Gertison, quote, you know what will surely fix this? More liberals in power. How many of these people will continue to vote elbows up? I'd say all of them. And this is partly why, as well, I continue to just lose faith in the lemmings of Canada that continue to vote even though they know what's happening, or at least are affected by what's happening in Canada.
Meant to help people in an emergency. But what's changed is now people are in an emergency every single month.
Food bank usage here has doubled overall since the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, and they say around 30% of their users have jobs.
Because the income they have is nowhere near covering the actual costs that it would take to live their life.
You're supposed to be a first world country. Again. God.
Manage decline and propagandizing people and getting them used to it. Mm-hmm. You work in Vancouver, which used to be a very high-paying city. Now, the same exact job, comparable, just across the border in Washington State, pays double for almost every industry. So
and the cost of food and everything else is lower as well, even in Washington State.
A job that pays $55,000 in Canada would pay $110,000 in Washington State.
Another concerning number, the food bank is serving 35% more seniors than they were in 2023.
It makes me sad in some ways that in a country where we have so much, that we have seniors who still need to rely on a food bank.
To be able to meet the ever-growing...
That's the thing. Canada doesn't have so much anymore. We've seen the graphs, we've seen the numbers, we've seen the debt.
Demand, Food Banks Mississauga is asking the public for donations.
Meant to help people in an emergency.
And especially with the older citizens that they were mentioning there, that more and more, they're seeing more and more older people. Again, wonder what's happening to your CPP.
Well, when I was researching that story, actually, Toronto, 10% of the population goes to the food bank. They missed a food bank delivery. I'm not sure exactly what that delivery means. Are they getting on an international scale? What's going on with these food bank deliveries? Are they buying food? But there was a huge panic in Toronto because 10% is actually 300,000 people that needed that food.
Managed decline. And more managed decline coming up as well. And this is an insanity of Canada that people also don't want to talk about. From Mark
Well, if you become reliant, we see people going to the food bank is growing and growing and growing by percentage every single year. And it's only going to continue to grow as people lose their jobs and the economy becomes worse. But as you become more reliant on the government, it guarantees a voter block for the government.
And today I saw a Vancouver Sun article just popped up on my X feed saying Vancouver will become more and more welcoming and open and reliant upon AI. So that's also coming.
Okay.
From Mark Nixon, quote, this is where things get uncomfortable. Canada expanded MAID, that is medical assistance in dying. Now experts are warning about potential links to organ donation systems. Every perception of pressure on vulnerable people should alarm everyone. Where are the safeguards? And
we've known about this quite a while. This is something I've been blowing the whistle on. They're monetizing the MAID program. They brought it in under a guise of deception, meaning it was going to be very limited. They never said they were going to profit off of this thing. Now they're profiting off of both ends, and they're profiting off multiple ways on the back end. They're not only harvesting organs, but starting to harvest blood on the front end. They're making sure they're getting rid of sectors of the population that they don't want, the young and sick that are typically going to be on Medicare for a long time and be a drain on the system. They want to get rid of them. So they're offering them MAID, and then they're also offering the old MAID as soon as they can so they don't drain the medical system, which is a failed system to begin with.
Especially because of that, because they don't want to fix the actual healthcare within Canada and anything that has to do with it, but it's just easier to off everyone that's getting too reliant upon it.
Yeah, and in order to qualify for the MAID program, you actually have to sign up as an organ donor. They want to make sure they can harvest on the back end and make profit there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And from Mario Zelaya, continuing with the Emergencies Act appeal from the government, says, quote, after being defeated twice, it will go now to the Supreme Court. So continuing to try and force this through.
And we talked about this in the Alberta section, but I thought we'll talk about it in the national section as well. And we would get Mario's opinion here. I like Mario generally.
As this is massive and breaking news, our government has decided to appeal to the Supreme Court in the invocation of the Emergencies Act. 2 courts have already ruled that invoking the Emergencies Act was illegal and unconstitutional. If you don't remember, when the convoy protest started, Mark Carney wrote an article, an op-ed, calling for the end of the sedition, and he was the one that publicly called for the use of the Emergencies Act to end this. He talked about different tools that were available to the government, and shortly afterwards, that's exactly what Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party did. Even though Mark Carney is currently the Prime Minister, back then when it happened, he was already advising the Liberals and the Trudeau government. He was the one that built out the economic plan for the COVID response. The spending, the overall budget, he was a key advisor to the government in the background. Now, this has obviously been a huge embarrassment for the Liberal Party. They waited until the very last day. If you didn't know, today was the last day for them to appeal,
And again, they didn't think he was going to appeal it. They thought the best decision was just to let this go into the dark. He obviously wants to have that card of the Emergencies Act to play, but he doesn't want it to be tarnished with this ruling. So he wants to get it overturned. And in my opinion, he wants to make sure he has that card in case he has to play it against the Alberta independence movement.
The government decided to waste more taxpayer dollars in trying to fight this because this is a massive stain on their legacy. Because right now, history will remember that what they did violated the Charter of Rights and it was illegal. For those who also don't know, the Emergencies Act, it used to be called the Wartime Measures Act before it was rebranded and called the Emergencies Act. Even CSIS, the Canadian version of the CIA, our intelligence agency, they said that the use of the Emergencies Act didn't even meet their standard and that the convoy protesters weren't a threat to national security, and it was basically unjustified.
Okay, that's good. And yeah, I kind of have a little bit of a plea for any content creators that are watching or are out of Alberta. You need to make this an issue again so the federal government can't win that court case. You want to take that card out of his hands as much as possible, because I believe the reason he wants to have the ability to use the Emergencies Act again is for the Alberta independence movement. Not to say that he can't use it, but there's going to be a lot of blowback if this case isn't overturned and he does use it again. It's going to allow the Alberta independence movement to frame the Emergencies Act as unjust, just like the last time they used it. Mm-hmm. So he wants to be able to build that narrative. Let's not let him do that. Okay. Were you drinking?
I was gonna say something and I forgot.
Okay.
From Melissa.
Oh, there's something I wanted to talk to the audience about really quick. Every week or so, we decide on topics for videos that we're going to do our edited videos on. If you have any suggestions, put them in the comments now, because tonight after this show, we're going over our topics for next week. And I'm having trouble thinking of a few, but we usually revolve it around Alberta independence or issues that are related on a national scale.
Or content creators or people that are also speaking up for Alberta independence.
Yeah.
We want to make sort of a video directory of people that have been doing this and that have been speaking up or canvassing or doing whatever it is, where people can find also information regarding Alberta independence.
Yeah, so if you have any content creators you recommend that we profile about Alberta independence or topics we profile about Alberta independence, put it in the comments now. We're going to do 2 more stories, then we're going to go through the comments. Hopefully there's some good suggestions.
And that's the secondary CPP video of where the investments are actually going and how they're being mismanaged is coming. I'm working on that one. From Melissa, quote, yikes, Bitfarms seeking approval to redomicile from Canada to the United States. Bitfarms Incorporated in Canada, headquarters in Toronto, says the move offers a strong economic and strategic rationale with better access to USA capital markets, $1.7 billion valuation.
Yeah, and there's just, I just brought this up because this is indicative of what's happening with Canadian companies. I think we have a clip later about them talking about Canadian companies leaving and Melanie Jolie responding. And it's funny she's responding because the other day she was talking about how much investments coming to Canada? How many businesses are coming to Canada? No, they're not coming to Canada. They're leaving. The statistics show that. The fact that she can stand up in front of Parliament and just gaslight and lie to the Canadian people is beyond me.
Well, the ones that are coming in are directly from China, connected to the CCP, with a CCP envoy on board as well, and India.
Yeah, but there's strings attached to even now because the Chinese economy is struggling. A lot of people don't know. Canada was hoping to pivot to China, but the Chinese economy is massively struggling. For the first time in decades, the U.S. economy is outperforming the Chinese economy, and Trump's only been in there a year. It took about 6 months for him to turn around the United States to the point where it was outperforming China. Now, it's not just that the United States is outperforming China. He's done a lot of things to hamstring the Chinese economy.
And now from Myers Zelaya, quote, Doug Ford acknowledges transparency clampdown is to protect his personal phone. Instead of owning the mistake, he wants to change the law so he doesn't have to abide by the court ruling.
Well, and this is the one I was talking to you about earlier. So this was a little bit crazy. I'm going to let him explain it because he's going to do a better job than I am. But Doug Ford is absolutely a crooked liberal and conservative clothing.
For a long time now.
Now, listen to this because this story is pretty crazy. So members of provincial parliament, and this is very common, they'll sometimes have 3 phones. They'll have a personal phone, they'll have a phone if they're a minister, and then they'll have another phone for their constituency. And I've seen this firsthand, both from MPPs, members of provincial parliament, or what are also known as MLAs in different provinces, or from MPs. And this is common. So Doug Ford, he's got 2 of them. He's got one as the premier, he's got his personal one. So when you work for the government, you have to be able to produce documents that the media requests because you're paid by your tax dollars, and it should be an open and transparent government. This is normal. This is what's fully expected. And so Doug Ford, since he was using his personal phone for business as the premier, that phone number and those records and the text messages and the business that he conducted on his phone is now fair game. Now, this isn't just me saying this. This is the courts that ruled it. So the courts ruled that. And listen to this. Doug Ford has decided to change the law. So what he instead decided to do is he said, look, because the courts ruled against me, I'm just going to change the law so I don't have to give anything related to my personal phone. In fact, I'm going to make it so I can actually start hiding documents, and these Freedom of Information Act requests, well, they no longer are going to be something that I'm going to be abiding by. He's making it much more difficult. And today he just admitted and acknowledged that the transparency clampdown, it's to protect his personal phone. He's literally looking at changing the law for him, for his phone, because he decided to use it for business instead of using the phone that is designated.
I wish I can change the law. And he literally says, I'm changing it to protect my personal phone. And he admits it. How corrupt is that? Oh God, he's almost as bad as his brother.
As the premier of Ontario. Let me put it to you this way. He screwed up and he made a mistake. And instead of taking ownership for that mistake, so people don't get to see what's on his personal phone, because of the mistake that he made, he's decided to change the law instead. I've said it once, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it 3 times, 4 times, I'll say it 1,000,000 times. He's not a true conservative. This is not something that is normal. I never voted for him.
Okay, and that's good there. Okay, let's go into the comments, and
I'll try to read as much as we can.
Can you take screenshots with your computer or no?
They'll hear it though, so it'll be very, very loud clicking sound. I'll go through them afterwards.
Okay. Well, yeah. Any suggestions for videos? And I seen there was a few. So
Joe Rush says, asked a lawyer earlier if taxes pay all government expenses. Do my taxes have to pay again to get public records in the Freedom of Information Act?
I don't know.
I read it weird. Asked the lawyer earlier if taxes pay all government expenses, why do taxpayers have to pay again to get public records in the Freedom of Information Act? Okay, I got it.
Oh, I got it. Yeah. And it's the exact same way in the States as well. And it's a little bit onerous because if you get so many pages, it can tally up to hundreds of thousands of dollars for certain kinds of documents. And when we're living in the age of digital, I almost think it should be free now. But that maybe there has to be a little bit of a barrier of entry. So maybe charging $5 or $10, but for unlimited documents, just because everybody might flood the government and they won't be able to get the documents needed. But with AI coming in there and all the documents digitalized, things need to start changing. And that's something to think about if Alberta gets its independence.
Yes, transparency.
Transparency through an AI system that can access
I
all
don't know if AI, but
well, you're going to have to in order to access all government documents for free. So you're going to have to use AI in certain ways.
okay. Troglodyte says NATO and the UN have to go. Never has something been more true.
Well, number one, absolutely. But a good thing that could, and I said it earlier, that might come out of this conflict in Iran, especially because I think Trump's going to be in and out within the 4 weeks. Nobody came to help him when he asked, and now they're asking for his help already in Ukraine. And the compare and contrast is already there. He can say, "You didn't come help us, so now we're going to pull out of NATO and we're going to pull out of Ukraine as well." Now, I don't agree with the Ukraine war, and I don't agree with the Iran war. That being said, the Iran war can still be cut short, and I think it will within the 4-week time frame, because Trump doesn't want to lose control of it. He doesn't want to hand over control to Congress.
Sean says that's why they don't want to lose Greenland. Fears that the USA would leave NATO as soon as Greenland becomes American.
Greenland's an interesting thing, and I forgot the girl's name now, but I was constantly recommending her. She went and she worked for multiple administrations. I think 4 or 5 presidents. I think it was Glenn Beck that was interviewing her.
No, it was trigonometry.
Oh yeah, trigonometry.
Let me try to find the name while you talk about it.
Okay. She had an absolute amazing theory, and it wasn't just a theory because she knew the ins and outs and the nuts and bolts of Space Force, a lot of the satellites that were in the U.S. Greenland is a strategic location to secure all the satellite information coming down from space that comes right near Greenland, and it's a big area of contention for the U.S. because they have no way to secure it right now, and it's all satellite information comes down on that location. And then it's dispersed through internet communication lines. You don't have to find it. That's fine.
Oh, but she's really good, though.
She was. And I was very, very impressed with her.
So I'm trying to find the name. I'm almost there. Hold on. I'm sure I can find it in the next...
She went in depth into that theory. And I've seen a few other interviews after that. I was recommending her in depth because I couldn't really get a hold on... the Greenland situation. Yeah, I know it was important for shipping lanes for China, especially because China's disrespecting Canada's their water space, and Greenland is a strategic point where the United States can clamp down on that. But that's not enough for the amount of pressure Trump's putting on there. And when she went in depth analysis about how Greenland is a strategic importance for all space warfare, basically. And all the information comes down by Greenland. And all warfare now is space warfare. Everything that's happening on Ukraine, everything that's happening in Iran is all backed up by space satellites, whether it's satellite imaging, whether it's satellite communications, whether it's GPS or other ground communications. It's all... whoever has satellites in space and controls that really has a big advantage on the ground.
And Canada has a $200 million investment to get satellites up in space. That's enough money.
Did you find her name?
No.
Oh.
Primorus 007 says most of the Canadian military will flee back to India when anyone attacks.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're going to try to recruit them into the Canadian military and sign their lives away because the military contracts can be very onerous, so it's hard to get out.
Troglodyte says Canadian military was on maternity leave. Sorry, we couldn't attend. And also says Don Cherry's "You people don't give up." Yes.
Oh yeah, we're hopefully we make it to the story. Hopefully Don Cherry does get the recognition he deserves finally. So there's a lot of controversy through mainstream media. It's just a bunch of BS. You give that man his dues. He's a real Canadian patriot, even though I've been disenfranchised with Canada. He believed in it at the point Canada was still Canada.
Troglodyte says if Rome had internet, would it have fallen? Would it?
Even more so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not a man. I don't think about the Roman Empire all day, as apparently most of you do. Joe Rush says, I see
the internet of that day was writing, and they had ways to distribute thoughts and ideas.
But if it had actual internet.
Yeah, it's actually very similar on the dispersion of ideas, because you cause revolutions, color revolutions, other things. Independence drives like Alberta independence is really made possible through the internet today, but at that time it would have been made through writing. Where before you had writing, it was very hard to disseminate information in the same way.
I don't know if writing was that common, or even people that knew
in Rome,
literacy.
it was massively that's when writing became the most common. And if you look back in the historical books, the reason we know so much about Rome, the amount of Roman writing hasn't even been read by scholars at this point because there's just so much of it.
Joe Rush says, I see a lot of ads for Brookfield homes in Canada. I wonder why.
Yeah, and they're going to be cheap modular factory homes, which aren't going to survive the cold weather. And that's why I suggested earlier, Alberta should really invest in the materials needed to construct homes and make home building companies to make Brookfield and Canada look absolutely foolish, build better homes, and undercut them at on the price.
Troglodyte says, EV bullish. Yeah, that's all it is. Burton says, investing in EVs is like investing in windmills, all nonsense. And all breaks down way faster than they tell you and pollutes way more than they also tell you. Troglodyte says, how many birds get chopped to charge an EV? Exactly. And how many children are used to mine for the materials needed to make EV batteries?
Well, and then the battery dies. It's almost impossible to recycle it. And then you just buy another battery. It's absolutely waste for the environment. There's mechanical engines that run on very little fuel. There was somebody, I can't remember if it was Alberta or Saskatchewan, but made an alternative fuel source that you can put in a normal motor engine that's made from recycled kitchen oils and stuff like that.
Joe Rush says, RV sales are up so people can drive away to somewhere better. I'm working on it.
RVs are an absolute scam at this point. The quality of RVs has just gone through the floor. I watch a lot of these RV horror stories. I used to want an RV, not anymore, especially with the quality they're building. There are smaller RV companies that are manufacturing good quality, but it's very hard to find them. You have to order usually directly from them. The big RV manufacturers, you won't even finish paying off that RV before it falls apart.
So watch out.
Yeah.
But Troglodyte says people can't afford homes, so they buy RVs.
Yeah.
Or they just set up a tent in Canada. Troglodyte says, scam green bullish.
Well, hopefully somebody's going to make some. I seen there were some recommendations.
I'm getting there, but you take a long time to respond to each comment. I'm just trying to go quickly.
I like to give the people the respect they deserve.
Sorry. Joe Rush says, I keep all my nuts, bolts, screws, etc. in clear plastic peanut butter containers, all separated.
Fantastic.
I'm sure that had something else to do with what he was saying. Maybe the RV. Maybe the RV is working on it.
Yeah.
And Troglodyte says Delaya is a fake conservative. So Mario for the North.
Yeah, I like a lot of his takes, and some of his takes I don't like, and he's very much a nationalist. That being said, he is a good source, and he does do honest coverage overall.
But I'm interested to know if you can expand upon that, because there's different opinions as to why. So if you want, let us know.
Yeah, and I disagree with almost everybody here or there. Yeah. There's a lot of people in the independence movement. I disagree with certain subjects. They say I shouldn't talk about the problems without an Alberta independence. I say you're absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, if you think you're going to ignore problems and they're going to go away, they're only going to fester. And it can help the Alberta independence movement to address this stuff head on.
Mm-hmm. And as I always say as well, anything you watch, anyone you consume, any content creator, mainstream news, etc., use your own critical thinking and build your own opinions out of what people are saying, but don't fully just go 100% into what someone is saying and defend them no matter what. Use discernment and critical thinking, because we've lost that ability for the longest time. And as I always say as well, I know less than I know more. So
who's talking more now?
Me. Joe Rush says 1 million for a rubbish house or 100,000 for a brand new RV, and you can go anywhere you want. My kids are grown and have their own lives. Just make sure that it's a good RV.
Yeah, and like I would recommend more a third wheel or a trailer, and then have the truck so you can detach it. And the trailers are typically a lot cheap, so when they do break down, as long as you have a good truck, you kind of sit there. And when you get to a lot of communities, it's nice to be able to detach and just drive that truck around. So I see a lot more utility within a truck trailer setup than an RV with a motor in it.
Joash says you can get a house for $500,000, but also comes with a lot of issues.
Comes with a lot of issues, and
especially in Canada
and the United States
and the U.S.
The U.S. is becoming very horrid. The same. I watch a lot of channels about RV construction. I watch a lot of channels about home construction. Completely disappointed in American manufacturing, in the industrialization of home manufacturing, and the quality. People aren't even finished paying off their homes before they're completely falling apart. They're absolutely infested with mold. Canada is probably even worse because they're building so many cookie cutter high rises and they're just falling apart. They have mold issues as well.
And nothing is built solid anymore.
It's built for managed decline. So by the time you're done paying off your mortgage, or even before that, you're going to have to buy another house.
Like also everything is fake. The rocks you put on in the front for decoration are fake. The walls are fake. You can put your fist through a wall. What is that thing called?
Well, here in Mexico, everything's built with concrete. I'm amazed with the standard of construction here, actually. So,
and I was used to that before I went to Canada, and then I started seeing that everything. I mean, and I understand it's weather, because of the weather mostly, but everything being built out of, what's that thing called?
Drywall.
Out of drywall, plaster, and wood. And it just can crumble or burn or whatever can happen to a house that now costs about $1 million.
Well, even if you see, like, it's a pain when you have to drill things into the wall to hang up all your pictures and everything else because it's concrete. But even that wall, it's an interior wall of the house, and it is solid concrete, extremely thick. I mean, the houses here are meant to last.
And it's
multi-generational
under concrete as well.
And the houses that are built today is even a step down of what was built before. A lot of houses here have been standing for well over 500 years because it's such an old city.
And churches as well. I mean, not just the cathedral, but also little churches from when the Spanish first came in and started building a few little churches. We were close to one not that long ago that was from the 1650s, I think.
Something like that.
Built in 1650 or something like that. And it's still being used as a church. Looks beautiful.
Yep,
Still
absolutely.
functions. Has a tree almost from that time as well.
Didn't rebuild it. It just stood there it withstood the test of time because they used rocks from rock quarries, real materials.
Albertan says, unacceptable French and PJ the Belt are great independence content creators. Yes, and we have highlighted them.
Yeah, and thanks for the recommendations. We have profiled both of those creators. And actually, thanks to both of those creators because they messaged us back and said, thanks for making the video. So.
Yes, and our next step is trying to get some sort of interview talk, something with some people. Albert also says John Bolton is great too. Go watch our video from today.
We just published today a video on John Bolton. It's doing fantastically, by the way. And he was one of the few content creators, actually him and PJ the Belt, I didn't know about before I started really getting into Alberta independence. And those two are probably the ones that most firmly planted the flag of Alberta independence. And I watch them both on a regular basis now.
Yes. Troglodyte says, my dad bought a house in Manitoba for $71,000 not long ago. And an RV is freedom, but also reflective of the bullsh going on.
Yeah.
And the fact that people can't.
And I really recommend, if you're considering buying an RV, look at, there's a few stations, I'll get the names of them next time, that go into the horror stories of people's RV journeys. Basically, she finds the people that have bad stories and then contacts the RV company to try to get money back for them. Huge following though, but it's always the exact same. The big three manufacturers control 80% of the market, and they're absolute garbage RVs. So she does recommend specialty RV companies.
George says, absolutely, I want one to be a rounder, lol. And Albertan says, Corey Morgan and Eric West are also okay.
Okay, I don't know those two, so you said it. I'll rewind the tape
I'll go after them. Beekeeper, hello, says, living in an RV in Alberta brings a lot of problems in the winter. I have to live in RVs in the winter, working in the oil patch since 1980s, and not many of these trailers since 2008 are made for -30. I think it goes to what you were saying as well.
I used to live in camps, and in a lot of the camps, they're all trailers, and it's very hard in cold weather. Even housing is hard in cold weather. That's why here in Mexico, you're building with concrete. It's built to last. It's fairly impressive, but if it was cold weather, I don't know if you can build
freeze.
Build with the same kind of concrete.
I think you'd freeze. Andrew Mitchell, thank you for saying proprietary.
But I will say one more thing about the RVs. Even the expensive RVs, which is the Aerospace, the big silver ones. that looks like spaceships. Those are twice the cost of a regular RV, so you would expect it to have absolutely no problems. But you're having ceiling problems and ceiling for the windows and moisture getting in, and then a lot of it is wood framing underneath. So once moisture gets in, it just deteriorates.
Again with the wood. Drew Mitchell says, proprietary. Thank you. We finally got there. Troglodyte says, I lived in an RV in BC for 1.5 years. Mold almost deleted me, almost deleted us too. And that was living in an apartment in downtown Vancouver.
Yeah, and that's the big thing about these RVs. It's wood framing in between, and you don't know when the mold gets in there. And then it just absolutely eats the entire frame away. It's impossible to fix. Then you spend $100,000 and...
But also within apartments that they're building now because of the materials.
Yeah,
and because they're badly built, they're not insulated properly, and it lets all the Vancouver rain or the BC rain get in.
Well, not just that, the quality of wood over time is deteriorated. I researched this absolutely a lot, and we don't have old growth trees anymore, and it's coming to the point where a lot of construction's built out of particle board and drywall, and they're trying to completely seal these homes in so no air goes in or out. That's actually bad for mold once there is moisture built up. Sorry, I watch a lot.
Yes.
In my spare time, I watch a lot about RVs and construction as well.
Albertan says, talking to Albertans, yes, and Igor Riltsev, you also watch, are also good content creators for Alberta Independence.
He wrote it.
No.
I was like, I watch him.
Those are
I watch Igor, and we probably profile him. He's from Ukraine, so it's hard to build a narrative off of him for the Canadian government, which is good because he's pressing back, and they want to always have the Ukraine flag flying. The national government does.
Flying a certain way.
Flying a certain way. So it's nice to see somebody from Alberta Independence. It makes it hard for the federal government.
Yes.
What was the other
Talking
name?
to Albertans, which we got that suggestion.
Yeah, we'll profile Talking to Albertans because he's been doing a lot of good interviews, especially with First Nations individuals now, or I should say Indians. Some of the audience gives me a hard time when I say First Nations.
Joe Rush says, yeah, I mean, why do we pay twice? We pay everything with taxes and have to pay again to get public records. It's rubbish. Transparency should be just on a website, and you should be able to access everything and anything the government does and plans.
Absolutely. And they should be forced to digitalize their records and keep paper copies. And if you're going to court, they should have to access the paper copies so they can't change the digital copy.
Mm-hmm. We're almost done with, let me just finish.
Okay.
Joe Rush says, research will educate you on quality. Hopefully.
Absolutely.
Primor 007 says, Formula One racing uses synthetic fuel for racing. If they can make it for race cars, they can make it for your Toyota.
There's all kinds of alternatives, and Toyota is actually one of the companies that suggested the alternative of hydrogen. They've had that technology developed for decades now. They just didn't bring it to market, but now they have solid state hydrogen. I think it's going to come to market, and I think it should be fairly successful. We'll see. They've developed hydrogen for large scale commercial vehicles as well as some airplanes as well, but they just haven't bring it to mass market yet. I think the big green scam was being pushed by a lot of global elites, and they didn't want that technology to come.
I mean, it happened to Tesla back in when was it? Long time ago. Actual Tesla, not Tesla, the car company. Nikola Tesla. Wild Stallion says, do you think an Alberta Constitution should guarantee the freedom to practice Christianity specifically rather than religion? U.S. Constitution founders probably did not envision Islam and Hinduism.
Yeah, I don't know how we're going to implement the Constitution, but there absolutely can be no specialty groups or classes. It's not only dividing BC right now, but because we do geopolitics, it's dividing countries like Chile, other countries in Central and South America, as well as Europe. This is what the globalists are using to divide nations, get rid of private property rights, and implement global governments. It's specialty classes. And that's how they're also taking away free speech through hate speech and compelled speech. And they're doing that again through specialty classes. People don't understand the absolute devastation you have if you have specialty groups and classes within a society. So I'm not exactly sure how the Constitution is going to work, but some people have suggested is get all these specialty groups into a room and have them kind of all negotiate with each other. That's not going to work because you're not going to have a cohesive constitution where everybody's going to be equal. Everybody's going to want to have their own carve out for their own specialty group.
Mm-hmm. Primors007 says Rockwoods are the best out there. Full aluminum.
Yeah, what's the name of the?
Rockwoods.
Okay, I'm not sure.
Frame and good walls. So that might be something to look into.
Yeah.
And Albertan says Freedom Calendar has tons of town hall keynote speakers footage. It's lots of good Alberta independence content there.
Oh,
thank you so much for Albertan for all the suggestions as well, because we got a lot.
What was the name of the last one?
Freedom Calendar.
Oh, I'll check that out because I don't know that.
I do, but okay. Do we want to move on?
Yeah,
to stories?
let's keep going.
'Cause we're almost out of time.
Okay, let's do.
Thank you for your comments, though.
Let's go 2 more stories, and then we'll go into RUMBLE. We'll end the show over there because we got a couple of subjects that are too sensitive for YouTube.
Yes, and I'm going to have to censor myself for this one, but hopefully you understand. From 604 Raw says, quote, big RCMP bust in Kelowna and Penticton. Not surprised.
Okay, we'll just leave it brief here. Yeah, there was a huge narcotics bust within Kelowna. I'm guessing this must have to involve the bikers, but I mean, it would be nice if they were going after people within the Vancouver area, specifically within BC.
I don't know, because we also know that there are a lot of both Mexican and other Latin American.
But Kelowna specifically, they have a stronghold on that area.
Okay.
So.
And maybe it was that. I guess moving on then. Wealth Mood said,
They're going after they might be going after very specific kinds of groups in Canada, or they let other groups flourish. I theorize they're going to do something similar here in Mexico. The United States will. They'll have cartels kind of fight amongst each other until there's 1 or 2 left. They'll play favorites amongst certain cartels by supplying weapons to those cartels until there's 1 or 2 left, and then they'll try to roll those 2 into the government.
Wealth Moose says, quote, Mark Carney gets called out on CTV. Questions about Brookfield ties, foreign interference from China and India still unresolved. Now a shifting stance on Iran. For a new prime minister, this is a very rough start to the year.
Well, his poll numbers are extremely high right now, but I'm starting to see, I actually do watch a lot of independent liberal media. I just like to know their talking points. And they're slowly starting to question Mark Carney, even though his polling numbers are so high. And they're starting to say, well, we're going to have to see something now. We like that you're doing all these things, but we need to see something. And I think the consensus is it's going to hinge on the North America Free Trade Agreement. That's why I think Mark Carney is going to secure a majority government before the North America Free Trade Agreement either gets canceled or they go into serious negotiations. Because as long as he gets that majority government, it's going to be impossible to kind of kick him out, and he can do what he wants at that point.
Talked about our dependence on great powers and sometimes even individual corporations. What did you take away from that?
I think it's quite interesting that the latter, that when he said, it depends on great corporations, I thought, boy, wasn't he the chairman of Brookfield Assets? And a lot of these deals do involve his former company.
Talked about our dependence on great.
Okay, we'll go 6 more minutes because I want to try to hit the 3-hour mark for the show.
Okay.
Let's do a couple more stories, though.
Yes. From Almost also, PM Carney says carbon tax will make Canadian steel leapfrog the world. And in reality, for Canada, it's $80 a ton. The USA is 0. China is 0. This isn't leapfrogging. It's pushing your own industry off a cliff. They're leaving. And Nico Lagan says, quote, Mark Carney tells reporters that the industrial carbon tax will help leapfrog Canadian steel companies over their American and international competitors. What the hell is he talking about? How can taxing our industry somehow make us more competitive?
Yeah, if you're gonna run a race, you don't win the race by cutting off your leg, saying now I have an advantage. It doesn't work that way. And the fact that
if you live within the I closed it.
Oh, you closed it.
If you live within the world of victim politics, then yeah, you do.
Yeah, I guess so.
That is how you win now. From table salt or cutting off other parts of your body and entering women's spaces. From table salt, quote, Polyev celebrates his Irish heritage on St. Patrick's Day. Very refreshing to see a politician not make St. Patrick's Day about migrants or refugees.
Yeah, I brought this clip up because we actually talked about St. Patrick's Day a lot on yesterday's show. I actually very sympathetic to the plight of the Irish right now, the globalists running that country. It's probably the most egregious of any country, and that includes Canada. The direction that they're taking Ireland and the amount of immigration they've been able to flood into the country. The Irish can't even vote their way out of this anymore. I watch a lot of independent Irish content creators that have absolutely lost hope in the country. And when they talked about St. Patrick's Day, they say, we're not surprised. This has been happening for 4 or 5 years, where it's just a bunch of immigrants in their Irish Day parade, and there's no actual Irish heritage. They're celebrating every other culture from around the world except for Ireland.
And the talking point is always Irish people have always migrated elsewhere, and they were a country of immigrants, et cetera, but that's not the actual history.
And I would love to see Pierre Poilievre just take off the gloves and just go right at these globalists, go right at what's actually happening, rather than saying, I'm celebrating Irish heritage. Say they're absolutely destroying Irish heritage, and if we don't wake up, they're going to do the same to Canada, and it's already begun. This is the opportunity, but instead, he plays what he thinks is going to play to the masses rather than take off the gloves. It's time to take off the gloves. It's, it's long past that time.
Can't people just say, well, can't he just say he's Canadian if he's so proud of being a nationalist and being the opposition leader? Just say why does he have to bring up other
countries? Because it's a photo op day for St. Patrick's, just like Trudeau used to like to dress up in his little garments.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, Prime Minister. I thought, given our shared Irish heritage, we would sit down for a pint on this very special day to celebrate our ancestors. Now, as you can see, I've just poured a beer very badly. This is indeed a famous Guinness. You see the harp right on there. But on top is a lot of foam and not much beer. Kind of like your government. You have lots of foam when you said that you were going to double home building, but not enough beer. Home building's actually down 15%. Lots of foam when you said you were going to build major projects, but here we are, not much beer. You haven't approved a single pipeline, not for oil, not for gas, and not even a pipeline for beer. And then you said that you were going to make life more affordable, more foam again, because our grocery prices are rising the fastest in the G7. We've got 2.2 million people lined up at the food bank. And then you said you were going to spend less. That too is foam. You've doubled the deficit and given us the biggest spending outside of COVID in over 30 years. And by the way, when you spend all that money, you cause inflation. What is inflation? It is when the prices foam up, they inflate, and they get higher and higher, and people pay more and more. So it's this St. Patrick's Day. I'm hoping that you will have the luck of the Irish and turn it around and have a beer without so much foam. And how do you do that? Well, you have to get back to the substance of the drink, my friend. We have to focus on getting things done. Get the government out of the way by removing all taxes on home building so that we can build houses for our youth. Remove all the liberal laws so that we can clear the way for pipelines to be built. Cut the bureaucracy, the consultants, the corporate welfare, the foreign aid, the handouts to fake refugees, to bring down our deficit and to have a strong money that buys good things for our people. That is how we have more beer and less foam. And with the luck of the Irish,
okay, you can leave it there. And it's not the worst, but it's very much in the box. I would like them to say him take the gloves off, talk about what's actually happening to Ireland, because it's been absolutely devastating. That story doesn't make it out because the number of censorship laws in Ireland, it's hard for content creators to even talk about what's going on over there right now.
Ireland was one of the first countries, and we actually did a report on this years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, that wanted to bring in hate speech laws and successfully did so.
Bring in some authentic Irish people talking about what happened to Ireland, how it got devastated, and why they had to immigrate to Canada, because Ireland is dead because of the government, and the government is on par with what Mark Carney is doing with Canada, and why they're devastated to see the same thing happening in Canada, and have Pierre Poilievre conduct the interview with that person. And that's how you take the gloves off, and that's how you put the ball in the Liberals' court. But they would call him racist for that, and he's too scared to be called a racist, I guess.
Yes, he's too scared to have balls. From CCFR, and this was interesting because you were talking
and this would
about
this will be the last story.
Yes. Quote, statement from YRP Acting Chief Cecile Hammond and Acting Deputy Chief Jim Kilby on the Vaughan home invasion and why police chose not to lay charges against the homeowner. And this conversation is getting more and more heat in Canada about self-defense.
After this story, leave any comments you have, because we'll read them before we go over to RUMBLE and finish off the show. But we're publishing a video tomorrow about this exact subject. So I guess it was kind of timely because I didn't know the story was going to kind of come up. But the story we're publishing tomorrow is about self-defense in Canada, what rights you do and do not have.
We recognize that in situations involving armed intruders, the immediate threat to life is paramount. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us here today. We are here to provide an update on an armed home invasion that occurred overnight, which resulted in a suspect being shot by the homeowner. Here's what we can confirm at this time. Just before 1 a.m., we responded to a home invasion at a residence in the area of Carville Woods Circle and Crimson Forest Drive in the city of Vaughan.
And
multiple suspects.
Now, in this particular case, they decided not to press charges on the homeowner, but that's usually not the case. You're really rolling the dice, and that's the problem with self-defense within Canada. Now, just because they made the right decision in this particular case doesn't mean the system doesn't have to be fixed. Because we highlighted a lot of cases, it didn't work out so well for individuals that decided to protect their family.
Armed with at least one firearm, forced their way into the residence. An occupant of the home accessed a legally owned and properly stored firearm and discharged it towards the suspects. The suspects were seen getting into a black pickup truck, which fled the scene before police arrived. The occupants of the home were not physically injured. At 3:15 a.m., we were notified that a male had been dropped off at a Toronto area hospital with a gunshot wound and that he had been dropped off shortly after the home invasion had occurred. Our holdup investigators have since confirmed that the male shot was there during the home invasion. Charges are currently pending against this male, who remains in our custody in hospital, and he is in stable condition. Based on the evidence gathered at the scene by investigators, charges have not been laid against the occupant of the home who discharged the firearm. The investigation is ongoing, and updates will be provided as they become available. We recognize that in situations involving armed intruders, the immediate threat to life is paramount. As every situation is unique, no one piece of advice fits all circumstances. Your first priority is to safeguard yourself and your family. This includes taking steps to seek a secure location and calling 911 immediately. The criminal code allows...
And again, if you don't seek a secure location, there's 8 points you have to go over before you take action to defend yourself. And if you fail to go over one of those 8 points or they're not in your favor, they will press charges on you. This is one particular case that the home invader had a weapon himself. So,
but also she said the situation is ongoing, and this is what we've determined up to now. So they could still press charges, I guess, against the homeowner.
Yeah, like it's self-defense within Canada needs to be changed, not because you don't have the right to defend yourself, but because typically the default response from police is to charge the homeowner if he defends himself in his own home.
Allows for every person to use reasonable force to protect themselves and their family only when necessary. Depending on the circumstances of each incident, homeowners can still be held liable for their actions. I'll now turn it over to Acting Deputy Chief Kilby, who will provide an...
And there she also said reasonable force. What is reasonable?
You can leave it there.
And they never clarify that. They never say what is reasonable, and each circumstance is different from one another, and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, so we go pretty in depth in the video tomorrow we're going to release. So if you do want to know more about self-defense in Canada, it's basically a roll of the dice. And a lot of the times the punishment is the crime because you're going to have to buy a lawyer and you can bankrupt yourself trying to fight the case when you were justified in defending your home in the first place.
Yes. And Troglodyte says cartels and immigrants. I'm guessing for the story. And Joe Rush says no pipeline for maple either. Why not? LOL. I mean, that is one export that Canada still kind of has. But I mean, didn't they lose a bunch of their reserves?
The Great Maple Heist. There's a great documentary on Netflix about it. It was fantastic.
Yes. And that is it.
Oh, that's it.
We have a bunch on RUMBLE. We will get to your comments right after we move over there. But YouTube, follow us to RUMBLE. Our username is down there. It's that green play button that you see there. And we should be there in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, and if you're not subscribed, please do so. We're really trying to grow the channel. We're almost at 2,000 subscribers, so we're going to try to hit it by the end of the week, hopefully.
Yes, and thank you so much to everybody that has subscribed. But we'll see you over there in a few seconds.